Throne of the North. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. No one has money. Hearing Ryan's answer, Black's face turned gloomy. Indeed, he came here specifically because of Ryan's frozen land territory. As long as he surrendered to Ryan, he would just have to give the young man a sum of money every year. He could also use the other party's name to continue to control his territory. One was in the northernmost part, and the other was in the wealthy Yinchuan County. Could he, who had been playing in the Northwind province for more than 10 years, control a little kid? As for the fall of the 5th-class noble, which would cause the Lord to lose his noble status, Black was not worried about this, as he had his own news channels. Ryan came from the Earl of Clayton's family, and recently after the Earl returned to the Empire, he had sent all the things that originally belonged to the Baron. It can be seen that the relationship between Ryan and Clayton was not as tense as rumored. Then, with the support of the Earl of Clayton's family, it would be difficult for the Empire to erase the identity of Baron Ryan, even after Ryan's death. In that way, he could become a lord with peace of mind, and then plan to become a 5th-class noble little by little. In his heart, Brack didn't think that the lord was a noble at all. In his opinion, it was just a fig leaf for the Empire and the southern nobles. He had to become a baron to keep his family's wealth. But who would have thought that a little brat would refuse his territory that could bring him tens of thousands of gold coins every year? Thinking of this, Brack was a little angry, because there was no baron more suitable for him to rely on than Ryan. In the next few days, before Earl Laxu and a group of flattering pioneer nobles returned, the noble mansions in Bifang City were almost trampled. The two barons Ryan and Hatton were very idle. Without relying on Ryan, his heart was very calm. He still looked down on these pioneer knights. No one relied on Hatton either. The Lord of Shenma territory was very sad these days. If the frozen territory is the poorest and most miserable place in Bifang province, then Baron Hatton, who is closest to the frozen territory, is either in the top 5 or the top 10. That kid was actually surrendered to Roche. Baron Hatton was still upset about this. His rough plan to deal with the knight territory of Wat might become extremely troublesome because of the existence of Baron Roche. 10 days later, Earl Laxel, who had symbolically walked around outside and was actually waiting for the pioneering nobles to raise money, returned to Northwind City. As the barons and lords of Northwind province were gradually determined, the list would also return to the imperial capital with Earl Laxel. So far, there were 3 earls, 9 viscounts, and more than 50 barons in Northwind province, reaching the number of 55. As for the pioneering knights, there were even more, a total of 110. Nearly 20 pioneering nobles, all became barons. Ryan was a little surprised. He was sure that a considerable number of those pioneering nobles must not be qualified to be classified as barons. For example, Viscount Miles's second son, March Miles, the pioneering noble who lost his territory, was recognized by Earl Laxel as a baron without a territory. I don't know how many gold coins Viscount Miles paid in this process to get such a result. Ryan was even more curious. In just 10 days, how many promises and wealth did this Earl Laxu get from those pioneering nobles? I'm afraid he emptied them all. The Empire actually gave Earl Laxu such great power. It seems that it is really ready to give up the Northwind province. Different people who know the result have different thoughts. Earl Weiss saw the answer that made him extremely excited through this incident. If the Empire was not ready to give up the Northwind province, how could it allow Earl Laxu to do such a mess? Moreover, he also heard that this Earl Laxu had a close relationship with the royal family. I'm afraid that at least half of the wealth would fall into the hands of the royal family. The Northwind province sent away Earl Laxu, the envoy of the Empire, but then, there were still not many nobles in the Northwind City with smiles on their faces. Let's talk about it. How should we divide the 1.5 million gold coins every year? Earl Winter's voice echoed in the hall, and no one responded. When the 1 million gold coins were divided up before, everyone was very enthusiastic, but now they were asked to take out 1.5 million gold coins. No one was willing. Since no one is talking, I, as the governor, will take the lead. Every year, the Earldom of Winter will take out 50,000 gold coins, and at the same time, Northwind City will add 150,000 taxes. Northwind City is the largest city in Northwind Province, with a vast population in the radiation area. The civilians inside and outside the city are also the best in the entire province. The annual 150,000 gold coin tax is definitely not all. But the earldom only took out 50,000 gold coins, which means that Earl Winter is only willing to be responsible for 200,000 of the 1.5 million gold coins, and even includes the original tax revenue of Northwind City in the Empire. After Earl Winter finished speaking, the remaining two earls also spoke up. The 50,000 gold coins of an earldom plus the 100,000 gold coins of a county, the two together only have 300,000. The tax revenue of 1.5 million gold coins, there is still a gap of 1 million, all of which should be distributed among the 64 fifth-class nobles below. 3 counties belong to the 3 earls, and the remaining 4 counties will share 1 million equally? Governor, isn't this ratio too outrageous? Viscount Hug stood up. He was not the one who cared the most about this matter. After all, Yinchuan County was rich and had silver mines. However, he represented more than just himself. Moreover, if he could pay less, his family would earn more. How could he stand on the side of the 3 earls? This was a process of wrangling. As Viscount Hug stood up, Viscount Landa also spoke up. Hanshan County was ravaged by orcs, and all the wealth was gone. It is impossible to afford a tax of 250,000 gold coins. He stared at the 3 earls. Hanshan County could definitely not come up with taxes, and it would even be difficult to come up with 100,000 gold coins this year. It was the place where the orcs invaded the most. And according to this ratio, wouldn't each baron's territory have to bear a tax of 10,000 to 20,000 gold coins? So, some barons also spoke up. My territory can only produce 2 to 3,000 gold coins a year. You all have mines, but I can only farm. It is impossible to collect taxes. This is also the reason why our Riant stayed here. You all know what the frozen land territory is like. I can only take out 500 gold coins a year. The nobles of Lingdu County united at this moment and said that their territories were in ruins and it was impossible for them to pay so many gold coins to the Empire for taxation. Chapter 52 500, No More. HMPH, hearing the chatter in the hall, Earl Winter snorted coldly. The aura of the Holy Land was oppressive, and his eyes were unfriendly. The 1.5 million tax did disrupt his thoughts, but it was absolutely impossible to ask him to take the lead in paying more money again. His Flying Wolf cavalry suffered heavy losses, and some of them were short of money. 200,000 a year was the result of the family's discussion, and there was no room for turning back. The Empire had already half given up the Northwind province. If the orcs invaded later, they could only rely on themselves. How could they protect their wealth without money? Thinking of this, Earl Winter was a little discouraged. Indeed, the orcs could not rely on themselves to invade in the future. After the 3 earls looked at each other, they tacitly loosened their pockets. Considering the harm caused by the orcs going south last year, why don't the 3 of us take out 50,000 gold coins every year for 5 years to make up for it? Earl Winter sighed as he spoke, but only 50,000 gold coins still made many nobles complain in their hearts. In those years, the Empire had 1 million yuan of construction funds every year. How much did you 3 earls take? If you still can't collect it all by then, the Empire should also understand the difficulties of the Northwind province. If it is less, I think the Empire will not say anything. Once this was said, it was basically doomed that this year's tax revenue would definitely not be 1.5 million. 1 million is not less, but 1.5 million is impossible. Every family has its own problems, right? However, the entire Northwind province is just a makeshift team. After the 3 earls said this, there was no follow-up. The rest were the nobles in each county, who were frowning at the huge number. The nobles in Lingdu County also gathered in the mansion of Viscount Miles in Northwind City. Do you think the Empire knows what the Northwind province is like? A baron couldn't help but sigh and said. It doesn't matter whether the Empire knows or not. My Shenma territory doesn't even have a lord now. The maximum amount we can take out is 1,000 gold coins every year, Hatton shouted directly, and the number of 1,000 gold coins was directly inserted into everyone's heart. Hatton, your mine can earn at least tens of thousands of gold coins every year. How can you be short of this little money? How much can you sell? Will you buy it? Humph. Since Hatton can only take out 1,000, then my Raven territory can't take more, only 1,000 gold coins. You still have the nerve to say 1,000, Hatton directly responded. 3 pioneer knights are attached to you, at least 3 towns. Your Raven Ridge will earn at least 100,000 gold this year, Of course, he was talking nonsense, but Baron Roche couldn't help but smile. What 100,000 gold, Hatton, don't spit blood, and the mine and slaves in Nightwat's territory were all robbed by you. If you come back, I will pay a tax of 10,000 gold punks this year. Don't even think about it. There are now a total of 9 barons in Lingdu County, including the pioneer noble baron who has just been canonized. Seeing Hatton and Roche quarreling, the leader, Viscount Miles, also had a headache. You two should behave yourself. Since it is a tax, then calculate it according to the number of civilians in each territory. Roche, your territory now has many more civilians, so the tax is higher. 1,000 gold coins are not enough for Hatton's territory, at least 5,000, and Kendra, your territory has the largest population in Lingdu County, 15,000 gold coins. Miles looked at an old man with narrowed eyes. This Baron Kendra was also an old man behind the Miles family. Hearing this, he couldn't help frowning. My territory can't afford so much. Before he finished speaking, Viscount Miles' eyes were already intimidating. In the entire Lingdu County, only your territory and the Frozen Land territory have not been looted by orcs. Hearing this, the Baron Kendra said nothing more, but replied, my territory can only support 15,000 gold coins for 5 years. After 5 years, if the development is not smooth, it can only be 5,000 gold coins at most. At this time, Ryan also stood up, and his voice echoed in the hall. You all know what the frozen territory looks like. 500 gold coins is my limit. Unexpectedly, no one refuted him, but some nobles couldn't help but sneer. Ryan paid so much less, and the difference would fall on their heads. If Baron Ryan can't pay the tax, why don't you borrow from us? Each family can borrow 500 to make up the tax amount of 5,000 gold coins. Baron Roche looked up, looked at Ryan proudly, and laughed. As long as Ryan dared to ask, he dared to lend. He would borrow money against the credit of the nobles. Even if Ryan died, his descendants would have to pay back the money. Roche, since you're so rich, why don't you lend me some money? Baron Barnes on the side spoke up and glanced at Baron Roche, but the latter didn't dare to speak. Baron Barnes, now in Lingdu County, can be said to be the most powerful baron in military strength under the 2 viscounts, but Roche didn't know what relationship this person had with Ryan. I'll only pay 50,000, the second viscount of Lingdu County, Dragon, finally spoke up. He looked at Viscount Miles. If you are willing to hand over Lingdu City to me, I can afford a tax of 100,000 every year. Humph, Viscount Miles looked at Viscount Dragon unkindly. He would never give up the county city, but if so, Viscount Dragon's 100,000 gold coins would block him. If he didn't pay 100,000 gold coins every year, the nobles below would have to pay more, and then the reputation of the Dragon family would surpass that of the Miles family. Old immortal thing. At this moment, the 2 viscounts wanted to curse each other to death. They are all so rich. Ryan looked at the gradually lively exchange and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Usually, when he looked at these nobles, they seemed to be stingy with 300 or 500 gold coins, or even thousands of gold coins, but he didn't expect them to be so confident. He was a little curious about how much profit these nobles made from selling the mines. Ryan and Hatton left Viscount Miles's mansion and headed for the Chamber of Commerce Street. Ryan couldn't help but ask, Mr. Hatton, can your mine really sell tens of thousands of gold every year? Hatton looked at Ryan with some caution. After seeing Ryan's soldiers, he was already wary of this neighbor. It's not as much as Roche said. It's good to have 10,000 or 20,000 a year, and we have to buy food from the Imperial Chamber of Commerce, Hatton said helplessly. In the entire Northwind province, almost every noble would buy food from the Chamber of Commerce from the south at the beginning of spring every year. The food problem faced by the Frozen Land territory is also faced by many noble territories in the Northwind province, especially after the orcs came once. The food gap is even greater. Chapter 53 Food and Slaves. Under Baron Hatton, the population is increasing. Through Baron Hatton's words about selling grain, Ryan knew that this guy must have collected a lot of slaves in the territory after the end of last year. His grain is already insufficient to cover his expenses, and he can only rely on purchases. But this problem is even more serious for Ryan. The chambers of commerce in the Empire first arrive in Bifang City, and then distribute the things from Bifang City to various counties, but Yinchuan County may be able to leave a batch in advance. The wealth of Viscount Hogg may be comparable to that of the Earl, Hatton said enviously, and then followed Ryan into the Imperial Chamber of Commerce. The price they can buy grain in Bifang City is lower than that in Lingdu City, but transportation also requires funds. It will eventually be cheaper, but it is also not thirst-quenching. The moment he entered the Imperial Chamber of Commerce, Ryan smelled a unique smell. Wine. Logically speaking, Bifang Province should need wine very much, because it is too cold here, but winemaking requires grain, and Bifang Province lacks grain, so wine has become a luxury in Bifang Province. When I met Viscount Miles in Lingdu City before, the Viscount had never brought out the wine. When faced with a maid's recommendation, Ryan still suppressed the thought in his heart. I just want food. I wonder how much food the Baron wants. The steward came to Ryan and asked with a smile. Ryan looked at the woman who called herself Osi and threw a gold coin into the other's abyss collar. At least 10,000 gold coins of food, how about it? Osi's breathing became a little hurried at this moment, and the smile on her face suddenly became flattering. Don't look at the nobles meeting in Bifang City, where tens of millions of gold coins are often involved. In fact, 10,000 gold coins are already a huge number. If you don't talk about the level of the empire, the transactions of small nobles are usually based on dozens or hundreds of gold coins. Like Ryan's previous transactions of thousands of gold coins in Lingdu City, it is considered a large amount. After receiving Osi's affirmative answer, Ryan continued, how much does it cost to deliver the food to the frozen territory? Frozen territory, obviously. Osi also collected some nobles from the northern Wind province. At this moment, she was embarrassed when she heard the name of the frozen territory. 700, no, at least 800 gold coins. She was even worried that the frozen territory baron could not afford the money at all. I will give you 900 gold coins. The food I want must be delivered to the frozen territory as quickly as possible. In this regard, Ryan did not mind giving a little more tip, otherwise it would be difficult to guarantee that all the food delivered to the frozen territory would be intact. Of course, the charm of the gold coins made Osi abandon the doubts in her heart, and the smile on her face became affectionate. Don't worry. Pulling his hand out of the softness, Ryan coughed and said, I also need some livestock. You can send them over when the time comes. Cows, horses, mules, chickens, ducks, goats, vegetables and the like. I will have someone tell you how many livestock you need. Osi's chest kept rising and falling, and the light of gold coins reflected in his eyes. I will definitely select the best batch for you and send it to the frozen land. It will be delivered in 2 months at the latest. Well, then. Do you have slaves here? Yes, Osi was almost sticking to Ryan. The Imperial Chamber of Commerce naturally has its own slave house, not far from the Chamber of Commerce Street, and the people in charge here are no longer Osi, who judges people by their appearance, but a group of rough strong men, led by a bronze knight. Because the Imperial Chamber of Commerce goes north every year, the journey is long and there are a lot of troubles, so even the slave house is carefully selected, not those pale and skinny serfs. Lord Baron, the best batch of goods delivered this year are all here, the Bronze Knight said with a smile on his face, and then the long whip in his hand directly whipped the iron cage in front. With a bang, the huge force shook, causing the pale-faced female slaves in the iron cage to tremble and hug each other. Only a thin layer of gauze was draped over these female slaves, with pointed ears and emerald pupils, which made people feel itchy. Is this an elf? Ryan was a little surprised. He looked at the Bronze Knight, who also smiled obscenely. Generally, these elves are not sold publicly. They were originally reserved by Viscount Landa, but Viscount Landa doesn't want them now. Ryan knew why. Hanshin County had been ravaged, and Viscount Landa was now in a state of panic. He probably didn't have the mind to spend money on these enjoyments. That Viscount was still very courageous. Let's take a look at the others, Ryan said calmly. These are cat women transported from other provinces. This year, the orcs went south, and many provinces in the north of the empire were invaded, resulting in a significant increase in the number of slaves. These cat women were the first batch to be captured and sent directly to the North Wind province, and this batch here, it is said that they have some noble blood, but it is no longer possible to verify. Their families were originally wealthy, but now the slave leader said this to flatter himself, but in fact he just wanted to sell them at a high price. Looking at these delicate slaves, Ryan almost got angry, but in the end he still asked, "Don't you have any others here?" Looking at the nobles in front of him who were obviously young and vigorous, the knight nodded after being puzzled. Of course there are more. There are more than 200 slaves with apprentice knights and 30 formal knights. I will take you to see them. After a circle, They were also slaves, but these with power on their bodies were much stricter, and everyone was locked with iron chains. After seeing it, Ryan was not satisfied with any of them. This group of slaves obviously had a bad origin. "What's the price of those female slaves?" Ryan finally asked. He knew that if he wanted to buy slaves to build roads and open up wasteland, he had to find those nobles. 3,500 gold coins for each of the 4 elves, 300 for a catwoman, and 150 gold coins for an ordinary female slave. "It's so expensive, why don't you just rob them?" Robbing is not as fast as this. In the end, Ryan could only save the 5 catwomen and 5 ordinary female slaves with regret. As for the elves, the risk was too great. If the elves knew that some elves were bought as slaves by them, the frozen land territory would not be able to bear the revenge of the big elves. It is said that there was a kingdom on the mainland that had directly fought against the elves because there were a large number of elf slaves in that kingdom. If you are not strong enough, you can't do it secretly. Chapter 54 Trading and Selling. The benefit of spending enough money is that all goods can be delivered to your door. When Ryan returned to the mansion where he was staying, the Imperial Chamber of Commerce had already delivered the slaves he wanted. As for food and livestock, he could only wait 2 months to receive them in the frozen land. After resting for 2 hours, Ryan went to Noble Mansion in Northwind City in the afternoon. "Go and inform Viscount Landa that my Baron is visiting," Rosen shouted in front of the mansion, and soon someone came out to lead Ryan into the mansion. The reception between nobles should have been cumbersome, but the nobles in the Northwind province rarely had such a troublesome process. After passing through several gates, Ryan saw Viscount Landa. He knew that the Viscount was very short of money, so short of money that he would rather give up the deposit than buy the reserved elf slaves. Leon meets the Viscount. "Yes, you are Ryan. You are a child of the Clayton family. You are handsome." Viscount Landa looked at Ryan and smiled. The Northwind province is not small, but the circle of nobles is not big anywhere. As a baron, even if he is a baron of the frozen territory, he is a real high-level official in the Northwind province. Moreover, Viscount Landa also knows some news inside the Empire. The Clayton family has been on the rise recently. Even if he has not become a Grand Duke, his status among the earls and nobles will rise a lot. Naturally, Ryan, who was born in the Clayton family, has not been targeted by anyone in the Northwind province recently. Even when he spoke in the parliament before and said that the frozen territory had no money, didn't you see that no one stood up to say anything? Everyone is a noble. Although there is not much communication, they all know about the Empire's internal affairs about Earl Clayton. In addition, they are also clear about what the frozen territory looks like, so they didn't make any obstacles. If I have to go to the south of the Empire in the future, I may have to be polite to Ryan. This is the benefit brought by the second generation of the nobility. Viscount Landa has felt that he has become much kinder recently. Perhaps it was the experience of the entire Hanshin County that made him change. He asked first, "Leon came to me, but what help do you need?" Ryan naturally understood the etiquette between nobles and gave each other face. "Leon does want to ask Viscount Landa for help. I want to buy a batch of slaves from the Viscount. I want both serfs and orc slaves." Hearing Ryan's words, Viscount Landa's face also had many more smiles on his face. For the development of wasteland, slaves are indeed the best choice. The orcs went south and ravaged many places, causing these nobles to lose a lot of property, but at the same time, they also brought in more slaves. The captured orc slaves and the civilians who lost their wealth and land were also forced to become slaves, and these would eventually become the property of the nobles. It's just that Hanshin County is in a mess now, and I also need a lot of slaves to help me cultivate the fields. Ryan, you know that we have missed the best time for spring farming, and this year's harvest may not be as good as last year's. I am willing to pay a 20% premium. Ryan directly used the method of adding money, and sure enough, Viscount Landa's eyes lit up. Slave trading is the confidence for him to return to his Viscount territory. The biggest buyers are of course those chambers of commerce, but those chambers of commerce only want serfs, and there is no market for those orc slaves in the south. Before Ryan came, he was still worried about how to deal with them. Orcs eat a lot, and the cost performance is very low. I didn't expect that there would be a sucker when I was sleepy. 1 gold coin for 5 orc slaves. I want 50,000, Ryan said directly, but was directly rejected by Viscount Landa. Lion, that's not how business works. Ordinary jackal, cat, ratman slaves cost 5 for 1 gold coin. But those minotaurs are very powerful. Their endurance is worth 1 gold coin each. It just so happens that I now have tens of thousands of minotaur slaves and more than 6,000 dog-headed slaves. These are all high-quality slaves who do hard labor, and they cost at least 1 gold coin each. As soon as Viscount Landa finished speaking, Ryan waved his hand and said proudly, 5 for 3 gold coins, I want them all, 5 for 3 gold coins, I still will. Viscount Landa suddenly stopped talking and stared at Ryan's face. You want them all? Viscount Landa stared at Ryan closely. He didn't believe Ryan was so rich, nor did he believe that Ryan's frozen land territory would need so many slaves. But Ryan gave too much? It seems that after Lord Clayton returned to the Empire, your life has improved a lot, Ryan. In Viscount Landa's mind, this is the only answer. Only the Earl Clayton family can be so generous. It is said that not long ago, all the things that originally belonged to Ryan were sent to the frozen territory. Ryan smiled without saying a word and looked at Viscount Landa. Soon, the deal between the two was reached. Ryan also bought a batch of food from Viscount Landa. 10 or 20,000 orc slaves also need food. At the same time, it is necessary to rent an army from Viscount Landa to suppress the group of slaves. It can only be said that in just a dozen minutes, Viscount Landa made a lot of money. After waiting for a few days, Ryan brought his soldiers and followed Viscount Landa to Hanshin County. A total of 700 soldiers escorted a large number of orc slaves and began to return to the frozen territory. The speed of walking with slaves is very slow. Under high pressure, there will be many orcs who die on the road, but Ryan can only do so. From Hanshin County to Lingdu County, there were no more than 700 orc slaves on the road. When approaching Lingdu City, Ryan led a few people into the county town. He went directly to the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce to buy some magic hatching scrolls. Warcraftigs, listening to Ryan's description, the big-breasted Irina's eyes lit up. She was particularly busy after the beginning of spring, but she still planned to put aside other things at this moment. Frost Python eggs. Irina hesitated a little, and then looked at Ryan. Lord Ryan, my suggestion is that you should sell it. Why? The growth cycle of the Frost Python is too long. It takes 100 years to reach adulthood. After you waste the hatching scroll to hatch it, even if you order the magic beast growth potion from the Southern Chamber of Commerce, it is expensive. The 100-year cycle can only be shortened to about 30 years. If it is more, it will affect the foundation of magic beasts, especially the Frost Python, which is also a large magic beast among magic beasts. The food it eats every month, your frozen land territory. To put it bluntly, the food consumption is large and unaffordable, resulting in the low cost effectiveness of the Frost Python. Frowning, Ryan also found that he seemed to have overlooked the energy consumption required for the growth of magic beasts. Although a magic beast may protect a family for hundreds of years, for Ryan at present, his territory is in a rising period and there is no need to waste it. Then, how much do you want for 3 Frost Python eggs? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55 Gift. Ryan asked, and Irina's eyes really lit up. The value of a first-level monster egg is only about 200 or 300 gold coins, and a second-level peak monster egg is about 1,500 gold coins. Considering that the Frost Python is also precious, if it is cultivated, it can become an assistant to some knights or witchcraft and magicians. How about I give you 1,800 gold coins? Ryan nodded and looked at Irina with a smile. It's a fair price. Ryan stretched out his palm. So, on the way back to the frozen land, the team had 10 more people, Irina and 9 guards from the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce. The 2 headed by the 9 guards were formal knights, and the rest were all trainee knights. And according to what Harrington said, these people should all be veterans who retired from the battlefield. That Earl of Blade Rose likes to raise demons as slaves, so almost all of her soldiers have fought against the demons of the abyss, and should be stronger than ordinary knights. When Harrington said this, he was not too afraid. After all, they were also warriors who followed Earl Clayton deep into the northern border. The swamp that had completely melted slowed down the team's progress. After passing through the swamp and part of the mountain road, the team that was busy building the road appeared in front of Ryan again. When he left with 200 people, But now he returned with tens of thousands, which shocked many slaves and supervisors who were building the road. Disperse all these orc slaves, and then build 5 slave houses for them to live on the road from the frozen land to the province, Ryan commanded, and the 200 knight attendants behind him and the 500 soldiers borrowed from Viscount Landa quickly ran towards the huge and bloated team. After returning to his own territory, Ryan felt much more relaxed. Looking at the scale of the town gradually formed at the foot of the Rhino Horn Mountain, Ryan looked relieved. Old Beard has not been lazy during this period. Just when he thought of the old butler appeared in front of him with a tired face. Master Ryan, you are back. Yes, this is Irina, the manager of the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce. Ryan nodded, pointed to Irina next to him, and then told Beard about the eggs of the frost python. It's better to sell it. Our food is almost not enough. Not enough, Ryan frowned. He bought a lot of food before. The old butler smiled bitterly and shook his head. My little bastard took your money and bought serfs at low prices everywhere, including blacksmiths and carpenters, and even recruited a group of free people to come to the frozen land. As a result, he bought a lot of slaves, but there were not many nobles willing to sell food. Now I have arranged for him to open up Wasteland, so that he can also know how hard it is to get food. So capable. Ryan laughed. Littlebeard gave him a little surprise, although the pressure on food increased again. According to your instructions, we will move the stones mined from the road construction back to build stone houses as rewards, and mix the soil with the swamp and transport it to the cultivated land terraces surveyed before, and then use a small amount of manure to increase the fertility of the soil. The leaves of the trees mined are used to weave cloth and cover the land to keep the temperature. The rotten leaves will naturally blend into the soil. I believe that in a short time, you will be able to see the terraces in the distance in the castle. After listening to the old butler talking about the changes after he left during this period, Ryan couldn't help but look at this dedicated old man with satisfaction. Build, what do you think about the establishment of the Lord system in the Empire this time? The old butler looked up in shock, but soon he knelt down. I am old and I don't have many years to live. I just want to stay by Master Ryan's side. If I can see you find a suitable mistress, that would be my greatest wish. Who said that if you become a lord, you can't be my butler? The lordship is attached to the 5th class title. If my own butler doesn't have a lordship, how can he do things for me? Ryan pulled the old butler up. It's decided. When the Empire declares the lordship, I will make you the first lord of the frozen land. Later, Little Bill will take over your lordship. The old butler trembled all over. He never thought that one day he would become a noble. He knelt on the ground again with trembling, and kept kowtowing while tears streaming down his face. Okay, I brought back a few servants. Go find the lady and ask her to help discipline them, and then send them up the mountain. Ryan sent the old butler away directly, and the decision made by Ryan shocked Irina, who was standing by. Lord Ryan is really generous. Irina didn't know how to describe Ryan's reward to the old butler at this moment. A lord's seat was given out so easily. You know, according to the rules, the butler of a noble lord is the servant of the noble. Although not a slave, it is essentially the private property of the noble. And if this kind of thing gets out, Ryan will definitely be rejected by many nobles. It's just a lord. You think too highly of this title. The Empire can change the noble circle so easily because the lord is not as important as imagined. Ryan looked at his territory, and the prosperous atmosphere of fireworks made people addicted. The gift to the old butler was not a whim, but in the future, his territory must have a lord butler to manage everything. Just like now, will those former nobles brought back from the Exner continent be respectful to the old butler? Impossible. But now it is different. Times have changed. Ryan will elevate the status of his own butler, so naturally, his status as a lord will be raised again. This promotion is not a superficial power, but an increase in majesty in the hearts of the people of the territory. In the past, Ryan was the lord above them, but in the future, Ryan will become the master of their masters. This is also why the emergence of the lord system has hardly caused too many objections from the 5th class nobles. The status and voice of the 5th class nobles have been raised again. Thinking of this, Ryan already had many ideas in his mind, and the corners of his mouth could not help but rise slightly. Seeing the smile of the young lord, Irina couldn't help shaking her body slightly. She felt that this baron seemed to be much more terrible than she had imagined. Thinking of the battles of road construction in the mountains and forests when she arrived, Irina knew that the entire North Wind province underestimated this frozen earth baron. Chapter 56, Knocking. Irina followed to the frozen land territory, for the 3 monster eggs, and also wanted to observe the frozen land territory in person. She had heard about what the frozen land territory was like and the intelligence of the sharp blade rose, but as Ryan gave surprises again and again, she began to feel that the information was not so accurate. Looking at the frozen land territory that was almost turned upside down, Irina did not speak for a long time. When taking the 3 monster eggs away, Irina's opinion finally changed completely. She thought of her purpose. She came here to check the commercial value of the frozen land territory and Baron Ryan, because the Empire had begun to give up the North Wind province, and the impact of this decision was all round. For example, their chambers of commerce may reduce the number of times they come to the North Wind province in the future. Secondly, even if they come to the North Wind province, they are only short-term merchants, and they will not say that they have stations in various county cities. At this time, how to choose is very important. Some chambers of commerce will directly give up some remote places to trade. It is not worth wasting more costs for a few thousand or 10,000 gold coins. For example, as she knew, several chambers of commerce in Lingdu City have decided to give up the trade income of the entire Lingdu County. Even Hanshan County, which is close to the Xiangshan Plain, is more valuable to the chambers of commerce than Lingdu County. In the future, the teams of these chambers of commerce will not appear in Lingdu County. Because of these chambers of commerce, others are hesitant. After all, if there are fewer chambers of commerce, trade will be barren, and Lingdu County may show signs of economic decline. At that time, they will also be affected. After returning from Bifang City, the Viscount Miles family was also overwhelmed by this matter. In the past few days, they have been meeting with those chambers of commerce who went north from the south, because it is impossible for the chambers of commerce to make these decisions, but the great nobles behind the chambers of commerce. If the Miles family wants to keep the chamber of commerce, they must impress the nobles behind the chambers of commerce. Irina doesn't know what it will become in the end, but she thinks that maybe she can keep some contact with this baron. The system of lords has not been known to the entire continent. So far, it has only been circulated in the circle of nobles, but Ryan still decided to inform some people about it first. Ryan reached out and touched Viscount Whitman's slightly bulging belly, and only withdrew his hand when the latter's ears turned red and hot. I heard that many people in the territory were pregnant last winter, and the population of the frozen land territory will increase in the future, then management will become a problem. Although the old housekeeper has been training young people, it is still not enough. Teach those maids more, at least let them know numbers and understand the geographical environment, Ryan said. Viscount Whitman could only obey. She was still in a state of living under someone else's roof and could not resist Ryan's orders at all. At the end, Ryan finally asked about the Baron Yez. Of course, he is no longer a baron now. Father and several others have been gathering in the tavern recently. They plan to build a workshop in the territory to weave clothes. Many people in the territory don't have a second piece of linen to cover their bodies. Ryan understood that these nobles from Ixnal, even if they became civilians, could still live better than most people. Moreover, there were many slaves and civilians in the territory who once belonged to them, and the unique temperament formed by birth, resulting in dignity and authority even if they were no longer nobles. In addition, the dozens or hundreds of gold coins hidden on their bodies could completely become the first primitive accumulation of these nobles who once had a lot of knowledge. Similarly, Ryan also valued the authority of these people and the higher education they had received. Call them over, Ryan said casually, but Baron Yaz and others who appeared in front of him soon became nervous. Baron Yaz looked at his daughter standing behind Ryan, as if he wanted to see some instructions from his woman's face. The reason for their nervousness was that they were worried that Ryan would ask them where the money on them came from, and whether the reputation they had established in the territory recently caused Ryan's displeasure. It can only be said that this group of people adapted to their status and life after they were no longer nobles earlier than anyone else. When facing Ryan, they did not have the arrogance they had before. If they had not seen Ryan enjoying his drinks with a good expression, they would have knelt down. Mr. Yaz, and everyone else, I have a bad news and a good news. Which one do you want to hear first? 7 or 8 people looked at each other, and finally their eyes were focused on Yaz, who let his daughter, the Viscountess Whitman, have some face in front of Baron Ryan. Yaz smiled and bent down and said, Lord, let's hear the bad news first. The bad news is that I promised you that if you offered your wealth, I could allow you to give you a piece of land in my territory, build a manor, buy your own slaves, have a few guards to guard the house, and cultivate the fields. This promise may be invalid." Hearing Ryan's words, Yaz and others changed their faces in an instant, looked at Ryan with some fear, and even one of them knelt down directly. "Lord Ryan, you said it at the beginning. As a noble, how can your promise be so cheap?" Ryan did not answer, but quietly put down the wineglass, while the Viscountess next to him tactfully picked up the wine that Irina gave and filled it up. After hearing this, Yaz's face turned pale. Without the original promise, how could they distance themselves from other people in the territory? Could it be that they, the former nobles, would also go to open up wasteland and dig the land like those mudlegs? But he looked at his daughter standing beside him, and calmed down and asked, "Lord, I want to know, what is the good news?" Ryan laughed. "The good news is that your dream of returning to the status of a noble may come true." After Ryan finished speaking, everyone looked at him in shock, and the people who were originally pale widened their eyes at this moment. They didn't do much in the territory during this period of time. They just took out some gold coins and built a stone yard for themselves, which was the closest to the foot of the Rhinohorn Mountain. During this period when Ryan was away, this group of talents gradually gathered together and prepared to build a workshop in the territory, intending to use their knowledge and means to make some profits. In fact, they also wanted to gradually expand their prestige and become rich in a short time when they built their own manor in the future. But all these things added up are not as good as the hope of becoming a noble again. In the past, they gave up everything in order to survive, so now, they can give up all their wealth again in order to become a noble again. Chapter 57, The Changing Ryan. This, Yaz's breathing became a little heavy. He looked at Ryan in disbelief, almost thinking that the other party was joking with him. Nobles, if Ixnel had not been covered by winter, the population had not dropped sharply, and their territory was still there, then even if they came to another world, no one could question their identity. But under the winter, everything is gone. Their ancestors established merits and became nobles. Their generation declined. After coming to the frozen land, many of these old friends were depressed all day long. If there was no wine here, they would have been drunk and died. They were ashamed to face their ancestors because they lost their noble status, but now they actually have the hope of returning to noble status again? Wouldn't he be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with his ancestors? In this short minute, Ryan saw these expressions change from fear and despair to suspicion, shock, and disbelief, and finally, to fanaticism and fervor. Don't control your expression too quickly. To become a lord is to enter the circle of aristocrats. Every lord can own his own manor, the kind that can build fences, as well as his own soldiers, retainers, and followers. These are the rights that a noble should have. Lord is a title, it's because of merit. What is merit? It's someone who opens up territory or has merit. Therefore, every lord should be an authoritative and powerful noble in the territory, second only to the lord. A lord only needs to be responsible to the lord and obey the lord's orders. Apart from that, he is a true noble in his own territory and in other places. Even when he meets other barons, viscounts, or even earls and dukes, he can express himself as a noble. In other words, if any of you becomes a lord, the difference between you and me is that there is not much difference, except that you don't have your own fortress and territory. Every word Ryan said made the former nobles present breathe heavily. Only when they became civilians did they know how noble their former aristocratic status and identity were. If it happened again, I'm afraid these people would never give up everything to survive. The honor and status of the nobility are more precious than life. For a moment, the eyes of these people changed. Compared with the slaves and civilians with muddle-headed eyes, the nobles were too outstanding. When Ryan saw these eyes, he couldn't help but give them hope. So, some of my promises to you need to be changed. If you can't become a lord, then you will have to pay more taxes on your future land. At the same time, you will no longer be a manor owner, but a farmer or rancher, a real civilian. If you become a lord, you can own your own manor. At least in name, your residence will be called a manor, and you will be the lord and noble of the frozen land. Ryan looked at these people meaningfully. Theoretically, every citizen in my territory has the potential to become a lord, but I personally think that you have the highest chance of becoming a lord. After all, the gap between nobles and those peasants is still huge, don't you think so? Ryan's description had already made these nobles who had lost everything unable to walk. Someone asked nervously, Lord Ryan, I wonder how many people can become lords in your territory. In addition to Beard serving as my steward as a lord, I only plan to confer 2 lords for the time being. After all, the territory is not that big now, right? There is no point in having too many nobles, too. At this moment, the 8 people looked at each other with vigilance in their eyes. From now on, they are competitors. Ryan smiled in his heart when he saw this scene. Competition brings motivation. With motivation, you guys have to develop the territory for me. I, as the Lord, have been working hard for the development of the territory, but you have become the masters of the territory. Not only do you not work all day, but you also want to unite and squeeze the few copper coins in the pockets of my people? I have been taking care of the territory for so long, and I have not even cut a leeks myself, and now it is your turn? The frozen land territory is not even in good shape yet, and it is too short-sighted to cut a leeks. When Ryan saw the old butler again, he saw light in the other's vicissitudes of life. Fortunately, the old butler did not swell up because of this. We need to speed up the road construction and the reclamation of wasteland. Every extra day that group of soldiers from Viscount Landa stay in my territory will consume a lot of my food and money, and keep an eye on those orcs. The frozen land territory belongs to the northern border. Don't let them escape and lead the orc army to attack me. Transplant some of the trees dug for road construction and arrange some people to become forest rangers. They will get their wages if they protect those trees, and the stones mined. Let the craftsmen beat the extra stones into standard stones. Don't pile them up on the ground, which looks like ruins. With a surplus of orc slaves, Ryan's barren castle can finally draw serfs to repair his fortress. As a result, the Rhino Horn Mountain has become very busy. A majestic castle on the architectural drawings will appear on the top of the mountain, overlooking all directions. Even some saplings have been planted on the Rhino Horn Mountain, so that the mountain is not bare except for the castle. The general direction of all matters was arranged, and it was the old housekeeper and the labor, while Ryan himself lived in the barracks safely during the time of repairing the fortress. Bang! Come again. Holding a corkstick, Ryan's eyes were firm, even if there was blood on the corner of his mouth. He stared at Brand in front of him. His purpose was of course to enjoy, sulking in his own castle, teasing the maid, and scratching the Catwoman's tail, but before that, he needed to make himself have a foothold. The identity of the noble solved 90% of his panic, but the last 10%, but it could also be fatal. The Empire has given up the Northwind province. This province that has been ravaged by orcs will probably not be peaceful for long. When the Lord system is established, the hearts of the nobles in the Northwind province will be completely determined. At that time, it will be a dispute between the various territories. The Northwind province is already chaotic enough, and it will be even more chaotic without the control of the Empire. Who knows, the assassin who tried to kill him and the nobles behind him might appear before him again one day. The reputation of the Clayton family couldn't protect him the first time, so it wouldn't be able to protect him the second time. Chapter 58 Territory Development Progress. The arrival of April made the air warmer, and Ryan even put his cloak away. In the military camp square, he wore a thin tights, holding a corkstick, and fought with Brand selflessly. "What are you doing?" Ryan shouted, and hit Brand's shoulder with a stick. "Show the ruthlessness you used to kill the frost python. Why haven't you improved after so long?" Ryan retreated with a stick in his hand, and then the two of them charged and collided with each other again at a moment when the leaves fell in the air. Bang! Without any surprise, Ryan was knocked away by the powerful force. His physique and strength had surpassed some of the Brand's knights, which shocked Harrington and his men, but he was still far behind the hero unit Brand in front of him. "Lord Ryan, you have made great progress, except for Harrington. The remaining 4 are not your opponents." Ryan glanced at Harrington's 5 Brand's knights who were observing this side from a distance and snorted coldly. "If the Flame Dragon Knights of the Clayton family are all like this, I doubt whether the Earl really went on an expedition to the deep north to the Mammoth Orc tribe." Brand shook his head and said, "You have made great progress, especially in skills and reactions. You have reached the limit of the official knight. It is too difficult to improve, and even if you improve, the increase in strength is limited. If you can break through to the Brand's knight, then your strength will definitely surpass me." Hearing Brand's words, Ryan also understood that the other party was right. He was just a formal knight. In various attributes, he was inferior to the Brand's knight. If he wanted to rely on various skills and means to improve his strength, it would be better to break through to the Brand's knight directly. At that time, The absolute strength, speed and physique would be able to easily crush his current self. As for whether he could beat Brand at that time, Ryan remained skeptical, because the one who made the greatest progress during this period was not him, but this guy. After the disappearance of the deer spirit, it was easy to be favored. Brand's progress made the Harringtons in the distance feel terrified. Even now, the 5 people joined forces and were unwilling to fight Brand. Brand in that state was not holding back like he did when fighting with Ryan. The violent Brand almost couldn't stop several times, but even so, several people stayed in bed for half a month. Of course, under such desperation, this group of people also improved in strength, including the 200 soldiers in the frozen land. After all, Ryan, as the Lord, trained so hard, how dare they, as soldiers, fish in troubled waters during daily training? Ryan didn't even doubt that his 200 soldiers could win a comprehensive victory in a head-on battle against the 500 soldiers rented from Viscount Landa. That's it for now. Ryan sighed and left the camp. He has been a little busy recently, and the training of his own combat strength has inevitably slowed down. Standing on the Rhino Horn Mountain, Ryan looked around and could clearly see that the scattered terraces replaced the uneven trees in the past, and there were black spots of people walking among them. In the south, a winding, intermittently connected road has begun to take shape. It will take at least a year to build a complete road that can pass through the mountains, forests and swamps. But now it is barely enough for ox carts and horse carriages to travel. The biggest change is the residential area inside the territory. When Ryan first arrived here, the village was scattered like earthen mounds, but now it is neatly planned and distributed on both sides of the street. The wooden houses are closely connected, and the stone houses have clear courtyards. The faces of the people walking on the streets are full of smiles. Tall taverns and other buildings are the symbols of each block, although those buildings do not have what they should have except food. The scale of the town has begun to take shape. According to the planned layout, in 2 or 3 months, 4 major blocks divided by a cross will be formed, and each residential area will have different functions. At that time, Ryan can live a life of cutting leeks easily and happily. However, Yaz and others still reminded Ryan that they should hurry up to prepare various workshops. The population in the territory is increasing, and the needs are also rich and diverse. Now there are only 2 things that are blocking the development of Ryan's frozen land territory. One is population. The more people there are, the faster it will develop. The other is food. No matter what time it is, in this northern border where crops are insufficient, there is never too much food. According to the Old Steward's report, the number of terraces in the frozen land territory has reached more than 6,000 acres. Although it is still far from enough, it has relieved some of the food pressure. It's just that this scale will be slower and slower in the future, because now the more than 6,000 acres of land are almost all due to the accumulation of oil and stones mined from road construction. It is difficult to replicate a second time, and the cost is too high. God knows how much those orc slaves can eat. Even if their rations are reduced again and again, Ryan still has to write to urge the Imperial Chamber of Commerce to transport food. During this period, he has already started to use the pie-in-the-sky method. The number of cultivated land can only be accumulated day by day. Ryan also knows that this cannot be rushed. Even now, some of the cultivated land needs to be nurtured. If the temperature is lower this winter, I am afraid that a lot of land will be frozen. As for the population problem, Ryan can still transport it from the external continent. That plain world is the foundation for the development of the frozen land. Time soon came to the end of April. The mild sunshine made the people of the northern border live comfortably, and the communication between the church and the nobles of the southern continent finally came to the North Wind province. The great nobles of the entire continent discussed with the church to establish the Lord system, so as to tell all the nobles and civilians with some skills and background. On the day of the God's Grace Festival this year, the Lord system will be officially established. That is to say, if everything goes well, one of you will be called Lord on the first day of next year. Ryan also told Yaz and his people about this, which made them excited again. One by one, they promised Ryan that they would definitely have the greatest contribution to the land reclamation by the end of the year. Ryan didn't know how many of them could persist. Land reclamation is not just talk. Those wild mountains and forests are not just difficult for wild beasts. But since they are willing to spend money to buy slaves from Ryan didn't say much. Chapter 59 The Last Warmth of Winter. On the first day of May, Ryan found the soldiers belonging to Viscount Landa and told them that they could go back. In the past 2 months, Ryan has gradually let Bran take over the matters of guarding the orc slaves. In addition, the food from the Imperial Chamber of Commerce is being delivered. Ryan also generously gave them favors during the handover, allowing them to have 2 meals a day. This can ensure that the orcs will not rebel for a certain period of time. When these barbaric orcs have ideas, they will no longer have enough strength to resist the frozen land. A few days later, Irina from the Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce came to the frozen land again. She came to say goodbye to Ryan. Every spring in the future, our Chamber of Commerce will come to the Northwind Province. When that time comes, Lord Ryan, don't forget to sell the iron ore to me. Irina approached Ryan seductively, and Ryan also stretched out his claws without hesitation. Pushing the person away, Ryan said with a smile, I will. The Blade Rose Chamber of Commerce is my friend. Remember to say hello to the Earl for me. I am not qualified to see the Earl, but I will bring your words to you. When Irina talked about the female countess, her eyes were full of stars, and then she looked at Ryan with some resentment. She was also thinking about consolidating her relationship with Baron Ryan before leaving, so as not to sell the goods of the frozen land to other people. Ryan ignored Irina's gaze. His blood was boiling recently, not his blood was boiling. According to his own observation, it might not be long before he could become a Bronze Knight, and he would be able to break through without taking any life potion. At this critical moment, how could he fail because of this woman Irina? I can't bear it. Ryan drove Irina away. In the next few days, he continued to temper his own blood, and his temperament became deep and heavy in the process. His handsome figure seemed to have turned into a knight wearing heavy armor. In daily life, he had several times been unable to fully control his own strength, thus crushing some fragile things. Finally, one morning 10 days later, Ryan stood on the top of the Rhino Horn Mountain. In the boiling blood, a dragon roar resounded through the sky. Almost in an instant, all the sounds in the entire frozen land disappeared, and the insects and beasts in the mountains and forests were afraid of the dragon's might. The red fighting spirit permeated Ryan's body, faintly forming a ferocious dragon flying with wings. He broke through and became a Bronze Knight, and his fighting spirit was far beyond imagination. At the foot of the Rhino Horn Mountain, Harrington's eyes were blazing. As the heir of Earl Clayton, Master Ryan practiced a purest flame dragon night breathing method. The pure flame dragon night breathing method is to constantly move forward towards the real dragon power. If you can become a legendary knight like the Earl, it is equivalent to a dragon in human form. On the Rhino Horn Mountain, the dragon shadow on Ryan's body gradually dissipated, and his long hair fell on his shoulders. He now felt that he was so hungry that he could eat a cow. Back in the castle that was still under repair but still habitable, the maid who had been waiting for a long time began to bring a lot of food, but Ryan still ate it all in a few seconds. After a long time, Ryan, who was finally no longer hungry like a dragon, finally stabilized his cultivation as a Bronze Knight. Knight's breathing method is not difficult at all. The red fighting spirit kept jumping at the fingertips, and Ryan's mood was also happy because of this. Calling Brand and Harrington, Ryan opened the door to the plane again after gradually adapting to the power at this moment. This time, there were only 3 of them. The orc slaves in the territory still needed soldiers to watch over them, and now the strength of their 3 Bronze Knights was stronger than that of 30 soldiers, so there was no need to worry about too many problems. The sun was warm in the frozen land, and the sky was a little hot in the coming summer, but once we entered the extra continent, the bitter winter made the dazzling sunlight above our heads shine down with a biting cold. Squeak the frozen snow and ice under our feet, even the sun could not melt them, but fortunately, there was no need to worry about stepping into the snow on the hard ice and snow. It seems that this world will no longer have any temperature, Ryan said with emotion, putting on the cloak he brought. There was also a lot of sadness in Bran's eyes. After all, this world was the world he originally lived in. Now, watching this world fall into eternal silence again and again, it is natural to be sad. It's so cold now, I'm afraid many people can't make it through this winter, Harrington said on the side. This was not the first time he came here, and what happened last time was still vivid in his mind. The rare sun guided the direction, and the 3 of them walked towards the south. What was a bit surprising was that after walking for almost 2 hours, they actually saw some greenery in the distance. On the continent of Exner, there are still trees that are not submerged by ice and snow, and still grow in the cold winter. However, when Ryan saw the vague outline of the city in the distance, he understood. The city of Furness, The last place of warmth on the continent of Exner submerged by winter, they have arrived at the southernmost part of this world. It is said that even the sea is frozen further south of the city of Furnace. Let's go and see this last piece of warmth. Gradually approaching the city of Furnace, Ryan also felt a warmth in the air, but it was still not as good as the frozen land, but it was countless times better than the north of this world. There is no snow here. When approaching the city, there was no frozen ice and snow under his feet. Not only that, Ryan also saw a lot of soil solidified on the ground, which looked like countless footprints. Many people have appeared outside this city. When Ryan was about 30 meters away from the city of Furnace, an arrow fell towards him, but Brand next to him stretched out his hand to stop it, and then threw it back. A scream came from above, and then the three of them saw nervous heads popping out from the city wall. "You are not welcome here, leave quickly, otherwise you will bear the consequences," the soldiers on the city wall shouted, and they looked into the distance until they saw nothing more, and then they gradually relaxed. Ryan came out, looked at the group of soldiers above his head, and said loudly, "I am Viscount Whitman, open the door and let me in." The appearance of the noble made all the voices disappear, and the city wall seemed to become a little chaotic. It seemed that the nobles still held authority in this city. Soon, the heavy city gate opened halfway. Facing a noble, who was also a viscount, this group of people had no courage to refuse. When Ryan and the other two approached, looking at Ryan's obviously much more delicate face, the soldiers who opened the door were completely relieved. It was indeed a noble. Chapter 60, The Duke of the Crucible. "Why so slow?" Ryan said arrogantly. It was not like that, but it made people suspicious. The soldier hurriedly explained with some fear. "We are worried about the cult." "The cult? That group of cultists attacked the Crucible City," Ryan said in shock. "Aren't there many mages in the Crucible City? How dare that group of cultists come here?" "I don't know, but I heard that it was because there were evil mages in the cult, which made the mages unable to expel those cultists." Ryan nodded, and this could explain it. "Take me to see the nobles here." Ryan must go to see the nobles here. After all, there are many nobles among those cultists, and even the cult formed by the nobles. Without confirmation, it is impossible to let Ryan act freely. What's more, a nobleman, how can he not integrate into the circle of nobles who have problems? Walking on the streets of the Crucible City, Ryan saw that there was not much happiness on the faces of the people here. They were in a hurry, pale and thin, and looked worried. It seems that this Furnace City has solved the problem of cold, but it can't change another problem: food. And it's obvious that a large number of ordinary people and slaves live in half of the city, and the other half belongs only to nobles and mages. The place where Ryan was taken was a place called the Furnace Council, which was the center for the nobles in the city to deal with things. Obviously, Ryan saw that everyone coming and going here had an extraordinary temperament, which was a state that only nobles could have. Someone met him, and it was a duke, sitting on a gorgeous chair, holding exquisite pastries in his hands, which made Ryan doubt whether this Furnace City was really short of food. "Lord Moriarty," Ryan saluted. Before entering here, he already knew the other party's name. "Are you the master of this generation of the Whitman family? You are so young?" The elderly Duke Moriarty looked at Ryan and said with emotion, then smiled and pushed another piece of pastry on the table. The sweet and moist touch made Ryan a little amazed. Even in such an environment, these nobles can still play tricks. The two of them finished their cakes quietly. After the servant took away the silver plate, Duke Moriarty asked, "I heard that you, Whitman, only brought 2 soldiers to the Crucible City." Ryan nodded, but denied it. "My territory was invaded by a cult. Now it is hidden in an iron mine. The remaining soldiers and slaves are there, but I think this is not a solution, so I plan to come to the Crucible City for help. But it seems that this place has also been attacked by a cult." Hearing Ryan's words, Moriarty's eyes revealed anger. That damned group of noble rebels actually sacrificed to the abyss demons and attacked the Crucible City, causing us heavy losses. All the food outside the city was snatched away. Where are the mages in the city? I heard from Mage Luna that there are 3 great mages with mage towers in the Crucible City. They should be able to easily solve those evil cults. Ryan couldn't help asking. Even if the evil cults developed quickly, it would only take half a year. How could the Crucible City be helpless? Moriarty shook his head and said, "The great mages did take action, but those evil cults sacrificed flesh and blood and summoned the demons' followers. A lava giant fought back the 3 great mages. If we didn't have some background and used spell scrolls to kill the lava giant, The consequences would be disastrous. In other words, the Crucible City actually lost in that war. Ryan was still a little unbelievable when he heard the news. Where are the soldiers in the city? I've also seen that group of cultists. They are just a bunch of mud-legged people. How could you not defeat them? Duke Moriarty looked at Ryan and couldn't help but sigh. I also know about the Whitman family. The first Viscount of Whitman, even at the cost of the collapse of the family's wealth, had to maintain the size of the army, and then he established meritorious service in the subsequent wars. I didn't expect that this generation of Viscount Whitman also has the courage of his ancestors. Just like in Ryan's world, no one would recognize the noble status of those barons of Yaz. In this Axnal continent, no one knew Ryan's noble status, but Viscount Whitman was a noble with history and heritage, and would be recognized. This is also why Ryan wanted to use the identity of Viscount Whitman, plus he still had the Whitman family's heritage ring on his hand, which was seen by the Duke in front of him at the first time. There are not many soldiers in the Crucible City, only 500, and these 500 were put together by our nobles, and then there are only slaves, but those cultists, they sacrificed their flesh and blood and became the followers of the Abyss. They became extremely powerful and could climb up our city walls like wild beasts. In the end, we relied on spell scrolls to repel those followers of the Abyss. There are no soldiers in the Crucible City, at least before the cult attacked. According to the ideas of these nobles, soldiers need to be trained, and training requires eating more food and wasting more labor. If there's any problem, just draw slaves to form an army. It's just that they encountered those monsters that became the followers of the Abyss, and the hastily formed army of slaves was no match at all. Since then, the Crucible City has only had these 500 soldiers. Even these soldiers are not completely off duty. It can even be said that most of the time they are still working. The food originally planted outside the city was robbed, and it is necessary to plant and harvest the second time faster, otherwise, many people will die this winter. Duke Moriarty and Ryan described the basic information of the Crucible City, and then from Ryan, he learned about the situation in the north of the Crucible City. When the Duke heard that the northern border had long been covered with solid ice and snow, even hunting became a problem, let alone any planting. He was silent for a long time. Later, Ryan said that he wanted to buy a manor here, and he also got the consent of Duke Moriarty. The price was a bit expensive, and it would take 10,000 gold coins to buy it. The evil church will appear again, and only the Crucible City is the safest place. Ryan didn't know why Duke Moriarty was so confident. He guessed that perhaps as the last warmth of Exner, there should be a trump card here. Otherwise, the lava giant before should have scared these nobles. Chapter 61 The Sea. According to what Ryan knew, the Exner continent was not too big, and was not even as big as the current Floor Empire. But there used to be kingdoms on this continent. However, in the Crucible City, Ryan had not heard of any king or even royal family members. Even the nobles of those kingdoms were only marginal nobles like 3 or 2 barons. Duke Moriarty was the highest-ranking noble in the Crucible City. He and the Mage Academy were in charge of the city. Perhaps he was more of a watcher of the city for several great wizards. After all, the only extraordinary path for the nobles on the Exner continent was magicians, and mages naturally became more noble. This is the so-called different treatments in different worlds caused by supply and demand. When it was night, Ryan thought about it and planned to leave Harrington in the Crucible City to help him collect information, and then took Brand back to the frozen land. Crossing the Plain Gate, even if he did not appear directly in the Crucible City next time, he would be near that city. Ryan also understood the rules, and this golden finger also depended on the warmth and coldness. So there is no need to worry too much about leaving Harrington alone there, as long as Ryan shows up every few days. The development of the frozen land is still going on, and wheat has already grown vigorously in the first batch of terraces, which has caused the Bane family in charge of them to be jealous of many people in the territory. If the big pie Ryan drew before made them orgasm, then now that the big pie has become a reality, it means that the wealth and class gap between the Bane family and other civilians has completely appeared. How can people not be jealous? Ryan has also intentionally or unintentionally arranged for the Bane family to help him transport some stones to various places recently, with the purpose of letting the Bane family, who are in the limelight, show up. Every time they show up, everyone will be full of energy for a period of time. There is no cost incentive effect, which is very useful. A few days later, Ryan opened the plane door again. He did not appear directly in the Furnace City, but in a snowy and muddy land. He was sure that the plane door did have errors. The furnace city is just over 1,000 meters away. Standing here, you can also see the city in the south. I'm afraid it is the only trace left on the continent of Exner. Ryan did not enter the city directly this time, because he was in the south of the furnace city. Turning his head to look south, he saw a white expanse in front of him and smelled a strong fishy smell and sea breeze. See, no matter how many times you look at it, you will still be amazed by the vastness and endless flatness of the sea, especially Ryan has never seen a frozen ocean. He has seen the blue everywhere, but he has never known the snow-white glaciers. The memory of traveling around the world through the screen was replaced by the glacier ocean in front of him, which exuded a hazy cold mist and looked like a paradise on earth. Is this the sea? Brand also froze in place, with a look of longing in his eyes. The people of Exner are free and yearn for the world. Among the countless stories and wines, there is an indispensable description of the sea. Every young man who listens to this story has the dream of entering the story. It's the sea, but it's a different sea. The west coast of the empire is known as the place where the gods bathe. One day, we can go and see it, Ryan said. He continued to walk forward because he saw many people on the ice. They seemed to be fishing. The endless ice surface formed a crescent-shaped lake near the shore. That was the great wizards of the furnace city. They melted the glacier with forbidden spells and formed a crescent-shaped lake. For more than 100 years, this lake has fed countless people in the furnace city. It also killed countless slaves. Ryan asked the civilians on the coast as a noble and got this answer. He looked at the lake on the glacier in front of him, and what he saw was not the ups and downs of the surging waves, but layers of ice blocks colliding with each other. The ice blocks were prism-shaped light fingers, and countless ice blocks formed unique waves in the crescent lake. Ice push. Ryan said a word, a little amazed that those great wizards actually used spells to create such a wonder. The wonder is not only a wonder, but also an important source of food for the Crucible City. More than 60% of the food in the Crucible City comes from this crescent lake that has been in ice for hundreds of years. However, as the past 100 years have passed, the marine catch that can be caught on the crescent lake has become less and less. In one net, 99 are ice blocks, and the remaining one is a palm-sized fish. This also forced the nobles of the Crucible City to open up the frozen land to the north to cultivate the fields, but this year their cultivated fields have been looted by the cultists. Ryan stood on the coast for 2 hours. The civilians and slaves passing by were very surprised that the noble lord would appear here, but they did not dare to disturb him and could only bypass a long way. After a long time, Ryan finally turned around and prepared to return to the Crucible City. They don't have enough food. In 2 hours, Ryan could see the crescent lake. I'm afraid there are not many fish left to supply them. It's impossible to have food from the entire ocean. The great wizards of the Crucible City can't do that. They can only melt the ice on the surface, forming an ice-pushing wonder and creating a lake. This lake is not much different from lakes on land, and it is not connected to the depths of the sea at all. It is much easier to enter the city from the south of the Crucible City than from the north, because there are so many people going in and out to fish every day, and the soldiers guarding the city have long been accustomed to it. Back to his mansion, Clayton came out to greet him, and there were also a group of maids in the manor. Master Ryan, these days, Clayton has not been doing nothing. He has been exposed to a lot of news about this city. The most critical one is, there is no more food in the furnace city, Clayton said apprehensively. I sneaked into several granaries, and there was no food in them. All the food is in the nobles, the 3 wizard towers, and the wizard academy. I didn't dare to go into the wizard towers and the academy. I went into the nobles' mansions, but there was not much food in them. I'm afraid that the combined supply to the furnace city can only last for 2 months, but they will definitely not take out all of it, right? Ryan said. He planned to stay here for a while to see the situation. He glanced at his spiritual panel and found that the balance was still sufficient. He could stay here longer by consuming double the spiritual power. In fact, even if he didn't consume spiritual power, he could stay, but in that case, he would have no anchor point. It was unknown whether he could return to the frozen land after opening the plane door here. It was safer to waste it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Food Crisis in the Crucible. The food crisis in the Crucible City came earlier than expected. It was originally thought that it might take half a month, but it broke out after only 10 days. There are no fish in the Crescent Lake anymore, and no food can be salvaged at all. The potatoes outside the city have long been looted by the cult, and even the farmland has been destroyed. There is not a grain of wheat in the granary, and even the rats there are starving to death. We want food. We want food. Ryan, as a Viscount noble, was also invited to the Crucible City Council. As soon as he came in, he saw that Lord Moriarty was angrily throwing the exquisite silverware on the table to the ground. This group of damned unruly people. They should all be hanged on wooden poles. They dared to ask the nobles for food. The nobles around were also very angry. They didn't expect that a group of mudlegs would be so bold. But since they didn't suppress it directly, it already shows the seriousness of the matter. The Crucible City cannot be without nobles, but it cannot be without civilians. Even the nobles in this city are not as extremely oppressed as those nobles in the Northwind province, because generally speaking, they are just huddling together for warmth in this Crucible City. In the cold winter, the pressure of survival is the most critical. The lack of food starts from the slaves at the bottom, but in the end, the nobles will also lack food, and the granaries in their own manors cannot support them for too long. They appeared here, saying that they were to suppress the Crucible City. In fact, it was also these far-sighted nobles who began to panic. They were not worried about the civilians and slaves, but they were also afraid that they would have no food in the future. Moreover, even a guy like Baron Hatton understood that only with slaves can more wealth be produced, and they spend a lot of gold coins to buy food. Of course, the nobles here would not be unaware of this. It was okay before, because the population was very large, but now there is only the Crucible City left. If a batch of these tens of thousands of people are lost, the future will be very sad. Who of you will go and suppress this group of unruly people? Moriarty finally calmed down and sat on the upper seat looking down. Of course, he couldn't personally show up as a Grand Duke. And it was said that this Grand Duke was also a wizard, one step away from the Grand Mage. In fact, the only ones who could suppress him were the three Grand Mage. A lean camel is bigger than a horse, maybe that's the saying. The nobles are still nobles in the winter, and they can still control more power and rights. No one in the entire parliament spoke. But at this time, Ryan stood up. I'm new here, let me go for this matter. Since Viscount Whitman is willing, then you go. Moriarty looked at Ryan kindly. He didn't expect that this young man would take the initiative to stand up and face the responsibility of this matter. I will restore peace to the Crucible City, but what about the food? Ryan looked at Grand Duke Moriarty. We can't rely on illusions to fill our stomachs. If the cultists come again, we'll be out of soldiers. Hearing Ryan's words, Grand Duke Moriarty's expression also became ugly. The reason why he chose to suppress it forcefully was that he was unwilling to give out food. Fortunately, Ryan continued to speak at this time. Those mages should still have some food in their hands, but I don't know if it's enough. We have to give them some food, show them something to eat, and then let them hurry out of the city to farm. If it doesn't work, harvest in advance, so that it can be mixed with soil and snow, and it can also fill their stomachs for a while. As long as they can survive this year, they will be better next year. Hearing this, some nobles also nodded frequently. As long as they didn't take their food, they were happy. The Mage Academy still has a lot of food, but they need to use wild beasts for experiments, so the consumption is also large. Moriarty revealed the bottom line, which made Ryan understand. Sure enough, the most food in the city is still in the hands of those mages. To some extent, it was because these nobles were also mages that they were able to store a lot of food in their manors. Ryan left the parliament and led the parliament's soldiers, about 70 or 80 people, to the other side of the Crucible City. The food crisis in the Crucible City was called a mud-legged riot, but in fact, they were just asking for food, because no civilians or slaves crossed the street that ran north and south. When Ryan came to this street called the Crucible City, the crowds of people scattered at the fastest speed. Any noble could suppress this turmoil, but this was not what Ryan wanted. In the shut eyes of the crowd, Ryan jumped directly to a house in 3 or 2 steps, and said in a loud voice, "As you can see, I am a noble. The evil demon followers looted our farmland and robbed us of our winter food. In the southern sea, the winter is getting colder and colder, freezing the Crescent Lake, resulting in no fish. The Crucible City, which has a history of more than 100 years, finally ushered in the biggest crisis today, but this is definitely not the last time. I came here not to kill you. but to give you food. Ryan's words, especially the word food, finally made many hungry people come out. But noble lord, we have no food, and we will definitely not survive for a few months. The winter in the Exner continent comes several months earlier than the frozen land territory. In July and August, they will usher in the biting north wind, blowing away all the temperature. Even the Crucible City is in winter for nearly half of the year. An old man was crying and complaining that the weather would get colder in a month at most, and there would be no way to go out to find food in that weather. If you leave the Furnace City, you might freeze to death. I will ask the Archmage to give you food for 3 days at most. Ryan held up 3 fingers, then told these people to go home, and turned and walked towards the direction of the Mage Tower. Looking at Ryan's departing back, the civilians of the Furnace City finally showed a glimmer of hope in their eyes. Considering many aspects, Ryan certainly didn't want too many people to starve to death in the Furnace City. He also wanted to pull people to his frozen land territory and become his own people. It's just that many things here don't belong to him now. But soon, he will be able to reap his own wealth. Looking at the tallest building in the Furnace City, the 3 towering Mage Towers, Ryan was also a little curious about what kind of people these 3 Archmages were. Chapter 63 The Crucible and the Archmage. The Mage Tower is in the Mage Academy, and the Mage Academy is built in the most important place in the city, on top of the underground fire vein. As soon as he entered the Mage Academy, Ryan felt that his whole body was warmed up. In this Mage Academy, in this winter, he actually felt the scorching summer. Shocked in his heart, Ryan found a nobleman according to the information given by Moriarty before. At the same time, the other party was also a magician, the apprentice of the Grand Mage. Miss Olive. Ryan performed the etiquette of the nobleman, and the woman opposite also responded to his etiquette. Mr. Viscount Whitman. Strictly speaking, the other party was a baron, and the Viscount Whitman used by Ryan was still a viscount, but who made the situation different now? He had a teacher of the Grand Mage. Mr. Moriarty has already told me the purpose of your visit in the letter, but the teacher doesn't know when she will meet you, Olive said, and Ryan didn't show too much anxiety. After all, there were 3 days. I have always been yearning for the Mage Academy. I have communicated with Master Luna a lot before, and now I finally meet her, Ryan said, breathing the air here greedily, and Olive's eyes lit up when she heard him say Master Luna's name. Viscount Whitman actually met Master Luna. I wonder if Master Luna has successfully advanced. For the Mage Academy, Master Luna is a legend. She never relies on anyone, but has surpassed countless people and become a great mage. Even the 3 great mages said that if it was 50 years ago, Master Luna would almost certainly become a sanctuary mage, and if it was 100 years ago, she would be a legendary mage. In the Mage Academy under the winter, no one can surpass the talent of Master Luna. Even the potatoes in the Crucible City were sent back by Master Luna before, which alleviated a lot of food shortages. There is not much communication. That Luna Mage is not a genius who likes to communicate with others, she is indeed a genius. Olive recognized the friendship between Ryan and Luna Mage, and they became closer in their conversation. Then, she took Ryan to wander around the Mage Academy. Some places are the meditation places for magicians, and other people cannot approach them. The Mage Academy is very large, but there are many forbidden areas, so Ryan quickly figured out everything here. I heard that the Crucible City and the Mage Academy can resist the winter because of the underground fire veins. I occasionally heard Luna Mage mention it before. Ryan looked at Olive and continued, that underground fire, it seems that it can't last forever. Ryan's words made Olive look ugly. She didn't expect that the biggest secret of the Crucible City had been leaked a long time ago. But thinking that this was told to Ryan by Luna Mage, she didn't have much anger, but just said helplessly. As you think, the Furnace City is almost exhausted. The Olive Mage was also somewhat desperate at this moment. This was already the warmest place on the Exner continent, but soon, it would be covered by the cold winter. Please don't tell Viscount Whitman about this, otherwise the Furnace City will become very chaotic. Don't worry, I understand, Ryan sighed, and then at this time, Olive seemed to sense something and said to Ryan, Mr. Viscount, the teacher is out, and she agrees to meet with you. Thank you. Olive took Ryan to a high tower. Looking at the magnificent tower in front of him, the surface revealed a simple meaning and looming secret patterns. Ryan felt that this was a building that did not belong to the era at all. The Mage Tower is the most powerful magical creation. Shocked, Ryan followed Olive into it and walked on the circular staircase, but felt that the interior of the Mage Tower was not as open as he imagined. There are magic restrictions in many places here. The things inside cannot be easily exposed, especially the experimental products that the teacher is researching. If they are released before they are completed, it will cause great trouble. A great wizard who owns a wizard tower is not only powerful in themselves, but also in the forbidden knowledge they possess. Soon, Ryan came to the top of the tower and met one of the 3 great wizards of the Crucible City. Meet Master Amethyst. As a great wizard, he can hide his real name, because the name, in many cases, will become a weakness. At the same time, having a title represents the power of a wizard. Amethyst is the name of this wizard tower, and naturally it has become the title of this great wizard. Although strictly speaking, only after the legend should have a title. The great wizard nodded at Ryan. She was old and seemed to have lost much vitality. Viscount Whitman's family, I met your grandfather a long time ago, or your great-grandfather, as a noble. They are all very qualified, and I have received some help from your family before. I am also very happy to see that you can survive in the winter. It is an honor for Viscount Whitman's family to serve the Archmage, Ryan also said modestly, and at this moment he completely put himself in Viscount Whitman's perspective. You came to see me, I wonder what you want to say. When the Amethyst Archmage said this, he put a purple crystal in his hand on the table. Ryan saw it clearly and was surprised that there was a badge of Viscount Whitman's family in the purple crystal. But Ryan did not ask it first, but said, Grandmaster, because of the last invasion of the cultists, the Crucible City has no more food for the winter. If it continues, I am afraid that half of the people in the Crucible City will starve to death in 10 days at most. Starve to death? Then starve to death. Compared with death, becoming a sacrifice to the devil is more terrible. The purple crystal master also showed a trace of fear in his eyes. However, after hearing the words of the Grandmaster, not only Ryan, but also Olive was shocked and looked at her teacher. She remembered that the teacher was not such a cruel person. 10 years ago, he even suggested that the 3 Grandmasters take action again to open up the Sea Ice Layer and give birth to more fish in the Crescent Lake. In comparison, Ryan was much calmer. He looked at the purple crystal master and asked, Grandmaster, I wonder if there is a problem with the ground fire. The purple crystal master looked at Ryan and nodded after a moment. 10 years ago, the underground fire has been dying. We have united the power of dozens of mages and cast legendary spells with the scrolls left by our ancestors to create an underground fire furnace to seal the underground fire and slow down its disappearance. 10 years later, the furnace is about to collapse and can no longer hold more underground fire. At the beginning, Luna left the furnace city because she realized this. She knew that it was no longer able to support her breakthrough to the Grand Mage. Just yesterday, the furnace dimmed again, and the temperature dropped by hundreds of scales. There is no underground fire under this city. The Grand Mage looked at Ryan. So, even if there is enough food, most people in the city will not survive this winter. Chapter 64 The Despairing Fact. The words of the Archmage made Olive panic. She looked at Archmage Amethyst and couldn't help asking, Teacher, what should we do? The Archmage shook his head and sighed. 10 years ago, we tried to gather all the resources and spent countless gold coins to try to make me break through to the Holy Domain Mage, so as to open the door to space and find a new home, but we soon realized that it was impossible for us to break through in this winter. The magic factors are no longer active because of the winter. We don't have enough heat and temperature to activate those magic factors. The entire Ixnel, those fire magicians, have long fallen in the War of the Gods, so at that time, we discussed going to the depths of the sea. Olive, did you know that there are volcanoes in the sea, and because it is far away from the north, those volcanoes are still active even under the ice? There are volcanoes in the sea. Olive opened her mouth wide, shocked by this, but Ryan was much quieter. He was not surprised by the existence of volcanoes in the ocean. So, Senior, are you planning to take a group of people across the glacier ocean to those volcanic places? Ryan asked. He had understood the idea of the Archmage and the entire Mage Academy. This is the decision of the 3 of us, but in the end, it will be the decision of the entire Crucible City. Then how many people do you plan to take with you? Archmage Amethyst looked at Ryan with some surprise, as if he was surprised that Ryan didn't plan to leave together. After all, no matter what, the Mage Academy will take those nobles away with them. After all, 90% of the apprentices in the Mage Academy come from the families of those nobles. At most, 15,000 people, but in the end, It is already good if 5,000 people can reach the destination alive. The Crucible City is no longer useful. After hundreds of years of consumption, this city is destined to become ordinary. It is no longer a representative of warmth, and it will be covered by the eternal silence of winter like the North. Little Whitman, you shouldn't be so persistent. Ryan shook his head. He knew that he might not be able to take any food from here. Master, my family was born on this land, so even if we die, we will die on this land. With that, Ryan said goodbye to the master and left the mage tower. Since you have made your decision, I will give you this thing as well. Ryan turned around and took the purple crystal that the master threw over, looking at him puzzledly. This thing was asked by your ancestors to help me. The blood of Viscount Whitman's family was used as the key to the seal. There are some knight combat skills inherited from your family, but the dear spirit has fallen. Ryan walked out of the mage tower, holding the purple crystal in his hand, and his heartbeat accelerated a lot. The news he learned in a short time just now almost made him cheer. If it weren't for the noble's innate superb acting skills, he would have been exposed in front of the master. It's good to leave, it's good to leave. To be fair, Ryan was unwilling to drag those nobles and these mages back to the frozen land. Although these mages are a huge help, when they return to the frozen land, many things may not be decided by him. These mages are extraordinary in themselves, and most of them are nobles. For example, the Grand Duke Moriarty is a great magician. Such people are nobles in the Northwind province even if they go to the frozen land. Unlike Baroness who has nothing but blood, he has enough confidence, not to mention that he, a Grand Duke, will listen to a Baron like Ryan? Even if he agrees on the surface, he can't have no thoughts in his heart, right? The pride and dignity of the Grand Duke may even make the two of them enemies. It will be too troublesome at that time. Ryan was thinking about transporting the people of the Furnace City quietly before, but now it seems that he just needs to wait. He left the Mage Academy. Suddenly, the scorching temperature in the Mage Academy became cold. He turned around. In such a warm place, who would have thought that the ground fire, which is the foundation of the Furnace City, has completely disappeared? If such news spreads, it will probably cause despair in the whole city, right? Even for those nobles, are they really willing to go to the glacier? Ryan returned to his mansion. The food problem was not solved. Did he have to move it from the frozen land until the mages left? This consumption was too much. Just when Ryan was distressed and was about to think of a solution from the frozen ocean in the south, someone came to his mansion and asked him to go to the nobles' meeting in front. At this time? Could it be that the news has been known by those nobles? Ryan was a little surprised, but after thinking about it, he shook his head. The news about the furnace fire should not be so fast. He came to the nobles' meeting. In the hall, all the nobles had serious faces. What happened? Ryan sat down and asked Viscount Sweeting next to him. This Viscount also has a long heritage and was once famous in the Exner continent. Perhaps, only these nobles with a solid foundation could escape from the north to the south in those days. Hey, the cultists and the followers of the Abyss were found in the north. The cultists are coming again. Ryan opened his eyes wide and looked at Grand Duke Moriarty above. Sure enough, the leader of the nobles was telling about the cultists' invasion again. Those damn cultists, they can eat a year's food, but they have eaten it up so quickly. They don't know what saving is, some nobles roared. No one thought that the cultists would come so soon, and the reason was that they had eaten up the food looted from the Furnace City. Those cultists who should be burned to death actually have former nobles among them. It's unreasonable. The food in the Furnace City was not much, but under the rationing system, exploitation, of the nobles, a small amount of food could keep the people of the Furnace City alive. Unexpectedly, the food that could keep a city through the winter in their hands could not even last for 1 or 2 months in the hands of the cultists. War has come again. There is no food outside the Crucible City. This time, the cultists can only plunder from us if they want food. They want to enter the city. Moriarty's voice was extremely cold. Some of the nobles in the entire parliament were angry, some were afraid, and Ryan slowly raised his head with bright eyes. There was food. Chapter 65. I'll cover you. After the meeting, Ryan met with the Grand Duke Moriarty again. Ryan did not exchange too many pleasantries with him. I think you should know that the current Crucible City is no longer the same as before. The Great Wizards are planning to evacuate. Evacuate? The Grand Duke looked at Ryan in shock. Where else can we evacuate to? Could it be that? Ryan shook his head and said, it's not that they have broken through the Holy Land, but that they plan to go further south and find hope on the glacier. The flames of the Crucible City can no longer resist the cold of winter. Ryan spoke, and the facts he said made the Grand Duke unable to remain calm and rational. The wizards are preparing resources for evacuation, but I think if the Crucible City can't withstand the attack of the cult, many nobles will not be able to leave. If those demon followers enter the Crucible City, do you think they will go to the east? Or the west? The east and west are two parts, one for civilians and slaves, and the other half for nobles and wizards. And food can only appear in the hands of these nobles and wizards. So, before that, we must stop the attack of the cultists, keep them outside the Crucible City, and the nobles can leave safely with the Archmage. Grand Duke, you don't want to have to flee in a hurry, do you? Archduke Moriarty looked at Ryan. Whitman, this matter, leave it to me, but I need food to boost morale, otherwise how can those hungry mud-legged people stop the devil's followers? You also know that the last time the cult invaded, it was all the magic of the mages. Moriarty nodded and agreed. I will give you food, and you must hold off the cult, don't worry. Ryan patted his chest and said, then turned around and left here, heading to the Mage Academy again. In front of the Amethyst Archmage, Ryan's eyes were still firm, as if he was a warrior who had been on the battlefield for a long time. That group of cultists are after food, but the abyss demons behind them need a sacrifice of flesh and blood. I think you don't want the mages of the academy to go to the battlefield before you leave. If you can't stop the attack of these cults and the Crucible City is occupied by the cults, your plan may not be completed. By then, on the vast glacier, without the protection of the fortress, the cults will hunt you down. How many of the 15,000 people you took away will survive in the end? The Amethyst Mage looked at Ryan for a long time and said, what do you want? Food, at least enough food for half of the people in Crucible City to survive this winter. With food, I can let them go to the battlefield and fight the cultists. At the same time, I also want to ask you for a method. In the last war, the cult had a lava giant. If you leave, I can't think of any way to stop such a monster, and Crucible City will still be breached. Food can attract the cultists to focus on the Crucible City, and a large number of well-fed soldiers can attract the attention of the demons. At least before sacrificing the flesh and blood of the Crucible City, the demons' followers will not hunt you down. I will stay here and cover your retreat. I swear in the name of Viscount Whitman that the cult will not cross the Crucible City for 3 months, at least for the 3 months that you can leave. As for 3 months later, I may die, or I may become the only lord and noble in the Crucible City. It is impossible to get food from the wizards by talking about human feelings and supply relationships. Now all we can talk about is profit. In the end, Ryan still got nearly 500,000 kilograms of food from the Mage Academy. The Mage Academy is indeed rich. After putting the food on the granary, Ryan asked Harrington and Bran to guard it with some people. On the other side, Grand Duke Moriarty and some nobles also joined forces to send part of the food to Ryan. In 3 days, the entire Crucible City seemed to come alive. Both civilian slaves and noble mages were extremely nervous and made their own movements. Ryan took over the defense of Crucible City, but he no longer had soldiers under his command. The 500 soldiers who were supposed to stand on the city wall had been called back by their respective nobles. After knowing the truth, these nobles were no longer willing to use their wealth to fight the cultists outside. Ryan could only temporarily transfer slaves up and tell them that as long as they became soldiers, they could have 2 meals a day. This temptation soon filled the city walls with fearless soldiers. They had suffered a lot of hunger, and now they felt that there was nothing more terrible than hunger. What's more, the cultists outside looked similar to them, with pale faces and thin bodies, but their eyes made people feel scared and uncomfortable. On the 4th day, the cultists began to attack. The hungry cultists rushed towards the Crucible City with their teeth and claws. Facing the tall walls, they climbed up with siege ladders made of felled tree trunks. Facing the falling stones, the cultists soon had blood on their heads. You useless trash, hurry up. Outside the Crucible City, at the cult's base camp, a middle-aged man in a black cloak roared angrily. On the hand's bone scepter in his hand, there was a blood-colored gem inlaid. The people around him just looked at it and seemed to be devoured by their souls. Your Highness, just activate the blood of the abyss, otherwise, it is impossible for those mudlegs to rush into the Crucible City. If we activate the blood of the abyss now, what will happen next? Do we have to fight in person after entering the city? Hurtado looked at the elder who spoke next to him, wishing he could hit the other person's head with a scepter to violently open the melon. But the Lord said that the mages in the Crucible City are running away. If we cannot sacrifice the flesh and blood of those mages, the Lord will punish us." Hearing this, Oltato trembled all over, thinking of the appearance of the flesh and blood slaves who had been sacrificed before. "Let all the slaves rush. As long as we can open the gate of the Crucible City, we will directly launch the Abyss blood and let those people feel the extraordinary army from the Abyss." In the south of the Crucible City, huge waves with hair like ice crystals dragged a huge team and left towards the depths of the glacial ocean. On the coast, Ryan held a purple crystal with a violent magic factor in his hand, and watched the team disappear from his sight with calm eyes. Back in the Crucible City, there was a deafening roar in the distance, but Ryan believed that Brands and the others could hold on. He came to the Nobles' Council again. There were not many people here, and there was no noble left. Chapter 66 Prestige. Ryan sat where Grand Duke Moriarty had sat before. The animal skin of the chair had been stripped away, leaving the cold seat. Looking at the scattered people, Ryan nodded to them. "Why don't you leave together?" "Leave? Where to? Exner is our home, and the Crucible City is our last fortress," a middle-aged man laughed. In his hand, a bottle of wine rarely appeared, and he poured it into his mouth. "My people follow the Mage Academy to the depths of the glacier, but I don't want to go on. My grandfather came to the south from the far north, and my father took me across the cold winter and came to the Crucible City. When I came here, I didn't want to escape anymore. I'm not a noble, and the title of Viscount is inherited by my brother, so I don't have any burden to make such a choice." Ryan looked at the others. "I don't want to live on the glacier. My father died there, and I don't want to go. The Crucible City is our home. They don't want to take me with them. There are many reasons for staying, some are calm, some are helpless, and some regretful. The Viscount has asked us to come here. I don't know what's the matter." Ryan looked at these people. "No matter what happened in the past, you will probably be my people in the future, so I plan to give you some things to do. Those soldiers are all converted from serfs. I want you to be their leaders and lead them to climb the city wall to fight against a cult." Hearing Ryan's words, almost everyone's eyes widened. "It's impossible for us to go to the battlefield with those mudlegs." Some people's eyes were terrified. Going to the battlefield was absolutely impossible. They would never go in this life. If it was a war between other nobles, it would be fine, but those cultists, their minds have been eroded by the Abyss. They are monsters. The war between nobles was more sophisticated. Even if they lost, they would just pay a ransom. Now if they are not careful, they will die. Of course you can refuse, but if the Crucible City is breached, I think your ending will not be much better, right? Or you can give chase now, maybe you can catch up with the wizards team. My Lord Viscount, what can we get if we go to the battlefield? Ryan looked at the person asking the question and replied, "I will give you asylum, and in the name of the dear spirit, I will regard you as my people, and because of the knowledge and etiquette you have mastered, you will be allowed to obtain a piece of land and build your own houses. I will be your lord, and you are my people." Viscount Whitman has knocked us from nobles to civilians in an instant. Ryan looked at these people and smiled indifferently. "What else do you have besides this noble blood and insignificant and useless wealth? You can't become a knight, and you can't go too far on the road of magic. The only difference between you and the common people is your birth. Whether you are a commoner is not up to me. If you are really qualified to be a noble, then no one has the right to deprive you of your glory. You must know that your ancestors became nobles by establishing meritorious deeds, making your blood noble. In the winter, you lost your territory, wealth and people, and came to the Crucible City. Now I want you to pick up the glory that belongs to the nobility, starting with war." Ryan stood up and left, his voice echoing in this gorgeous Parliament Hall. "You can refuse, but when I won't regret it." "You'd better not regret it either." Ryan walked out of the Parliament Hall, turned over and rode on his warhorse, galloping on this noble land. The dark hoof prints imprinted on the clean ground were extremely dazzling. Whoa! Ryan pulled the reins. His arrival made all eyes fall on him, but no one dared to breathe loudly. Because at this moment, Ryan was immediately in front of the city gate, and behind him were 200 neatly armed knights. Long before the mages left at the same time, Ryan opened the plane door and asked Harrington to return to the frozen land to bring back all the soldiers. He did not go back in person because the plane door would be closed after he returned. If he opened it again and appeared outside the city, it would be miserable. 200 majestic and silent knights appeared in the Crucible City, shocking and ecstatic. Ryan drew out his knight's sword, and the mithril armor flashed a dazzling light in the sun. He didn't say anything nonsense, just raised the sword and bathed in the sun. "We will win," With a loud shout, the 200 knights behind him also raised their knights' lances high and whistled in unison. "We will win!" A blood-red stag phantom appeared above the army of only 200 people, making a weak but shocking deer cry. The spirit of the stag. Countless eyes looked at the shadow of the stag, breathing rapidly. Some grew up listening to those countless stories, and some hoped that the stag would appear to save the people of Exner. At this moment, these people began to gradually echo the soldiers. And as if influenced by them, the voices in the Crucible City began to sound like a tsunami. "We must win." Ryan rode on a warhorse, leading 200 soldiers to rush and trample on the streets of the Crucible City. His voice was loud and fell into the ears of every citizen of the Crucible City. "Winter has taken away our past, and the devil's followers are also coming to occupy our land. They plunder our food, eat our flesh and blood, and sacrifice our souls. I, Ryan Clayton, will never allow such a thing to happen in my territory. I swear by the honor of my family that no one can rob our land and food. If the devil wants to kill us, then the long swords in our hands will also kill the devil in the abyss. I will protect my loyal people, and I will defend my land. I swear by the spirit of the stag that I will fight to the death with the invaders outside the city. I swear by the spirit of the stag that I will lead all my people to the land of survival." Roar. Along with Ryan's roar, a huge stag phantom appeared above his head. The lifelike stag seemed to pull everyone back to the prosperous, free and easy, story-filled and wine-filled Exner continent more than 100 years ago. Many old people knelt on the ground with tears in their eyes, calling for the protection of the stag. At this moment, Ryan's reputation reached its peak. He returned to the north wall and climbed up the wall. Wherever he passed, all the soldiers bowed their heads to show their own loyalty. Ryan held the knight's sword and looked at the cultists outside the city who were charging from afar to the city and attacking the city again. "Soldiers, kill our enemies, we will win." The soldiers, who were originally slaves, were like chicken blood at this moment, constantly shouting and throwing stones. After throwing the stones, they also held on to the forks, wooden hammers and other farm tools and kept stabbing the cultists who climbed up. Chapter 67 War. "Kill them all." Shouts came from the city wall one after another. There were not so many tricks on the battlefield. It was either life or death. The soldiers had no more choices and could only do everything they could to kill the cultists who climbed up. Not far outside the Crucible City, Oltato opened his eyes wide and stared at the battlefield in front of him. Seeing that his soldiers were getting fewer and fewer, but they could not climb up the city wall, he began to get anxious. "This damn bunch of trash, they have eaten so much food, but they can't even attack the city wall until now. How can the nobles in the city be willing to spend so much money to train those mudlegs for this war?" He has given all the food to the cultists to eat and drink. He doesn't believe that the nobles in the Crucible City can do the same. But the current scene is that no matter how he whips the cultists, they can never rush to the city wall. Looking at the dazzling mithril color on the Crucible City, Oltato also gritted his teeth. Damn nobles, they actually have such a background. Charge, charge, whoever dares to retreat will be sacrificed. Someone next to him couldn't help but grit his teeth and suggest, "Your Excellency the Pope, trigger the blood of the abyss. If it's too late, we won't have enough soldiers." When Hurtado heard this, he also gritted his teeth. He didn't want to get to this point now, but the current situation seemed to not allow him to delay any further. "You charge up yourself and let them rush up quickly. After triggering the blood of the abyss, they will not recognize their relatives. If we can't let them kill people in the Crucible City, it will be our own people who will die." Hurtado pointed at a person around him. The latter had an ugly face and wanted to refuse, but he saw Hurtado's scarlet eyes. Swallowing his saliva, he still drew his long sword and rushed towards the battlefield. At the same place, Hurtado sat cross-legged, devoutly and fanatically took out a glass bottle from his arms. There was an eye with vertical pupils in the bottle. "The most noble and powerful Dionysus, your loyal believers call for your attention, and pray that you will grant the believers the power of immortality." In the sky, the bright sunshine gradually became stained with a layer of shadow, and the eyes in front of Oltato floated above the sky, looking at the battlefield in the distance. As he watched, Ryan also felt his scalp tingling, as if something was about to drill out from his eyebrows, but the next moment, a roar of a stag dispelled all the discomfort. Divinity, blessing of the deer spirit. Ryan was surprised that this divinity had such an effect. The breath of the deer spirit dispelled the will of the devil, but Ryan looked at the cultists and found that these cultists were wailing in place. Their skin turned black and blue, their arms became slender, Their palms turned into monster claws, and their feet pierced the straw sandals like wild beasts. The teeth became sharp, the roar of the voice was more like a beast than a human, and the body grew a lot taller. Suddenly, for the soldiers of the Crucible City, it was a look of contemplation. The followers of the Abyss, the people of the devil, there were screams and roars. Some monsters were killed by the brave soldiers in the process of transformation, but more Abyss monsters had completely transformed. They were frantically fighting all the living things around them. Whether they were human soldiers or companions who were also monsters, they were all enemies in their eyes. Drive them down, push down the wall. Ryan took the lead and rushed up directly. The huge force slashed the monsters. The knight's long sword directly split a monster in half, and then kicked the monster next to it off the wall. Where are the spells? Ryan turned his head and roared at some people. At this moment, the nobles who had made decisions in the Noble Council before also began to release spells. Spells fell one after another, either killing the Abyss monsters or pushing them off the wall. Seeing this scene, the soldiers who were converted from slaves gradually lost their fear. They shouted loudly to cover up their fear and killed the Abyss monsters. These monsters are stronger than slave soldiers and have stronger physical strength, but they are not to the extent that they cannot be resisted. One by one, the Abyss monsters were killed and pushed down, but more monsters were constantly climbing up under the city wall. As monsters, they were even more flexible than when they were humans. Ha ha ha. Reason has not completely disappeared. Oltado laughed and looked at the Crucible City cruelly. No one could stop the killing of the people of the Abyss. But the next moment, his eyes widened and he saw that the gate of the Crucible City was actually opened at this moment. Surrender? Impossible? Charge! With a roar that resounded throughout the battlefield, Oltado's eyes looked at the open city gate, and there was a deafening movement coming from it. Then he saw that one after another powerful cavalry rushed out. The people of the Abyss who originally wanted to rush into the city gate were directly knocked out by the charge of these cavalry. They fell to the ground and wailed a few times before they were declared dead. In just a moment, the Abyss followers blocking the city gate were trampled and knocked away, and none of them could survive by chance. Brand, who rushed out of the city with 200 cavalrymen, did not stop at all and led the cavalrymen to kill the Abyss monsters on both sides. In front of him, no Abyss monster could be a match. Even if some of the Abyss monsters were particularly tall and seemed to be favored by the devil, they were still picked up by Brand's terrible strength and keen insight, and then thrown out and smashed on the ground. Finally, they were trampled into meat paste by the iron hooves of the war horses. Kill. Only 200 cavalrymen easily changed the situation of the war. Thousands of cultists collapsed under this charge and began to completely lose their minds and kill each other. At this moment, Ryan finally understood why after the Pan-Plane War of the Gods, the Extraordinary Legion became the protagonist of the war and the slave army lost its function. The gap is too big. The specially trained war horses are full of vigor and blood. Every soldier of the Extraordinary Legion is at least an apprentice knight. They have full-time training and a stronger body than ordinary people. They even practice night breathing to make their state perfect. In addition to the invulnerable armor, even if ordinary people hold sharp weapons, they cannot break the defense of these knights. Instead, they will be killed in a moment. How can they fight? Well-trained serf soldiers can rely on human lives to kill them with a number several times that of extraordinary soldiers, but they can often not collapse before that. The army can be said to be elite. On the city wall, there are also several particularly tall Abyss monsters. If ordinary monsters are only about 2 meters, these are about 2.5 meters. Go and deal with them, Ryan ordered without turning his head, and the Harringtons around him immediately rushed towards the Abyss monsters. The knight's long sword fell and cut off the head of the Abyss monster. Harrington turned his head and glanced at the trembling apprentice mage with a cold look under the knight's armor, and then returned to Ryan's side to guard without turning his head. Chapter 68 Demon Giant and Artifact Heroic Spirit. This man actually has such a powerful army. The mage's face turned red after he came back to his senses. He was so scared, not only of the monsters, but also of the human soldiers. How can he have so much food to feed this army? The mage was somewhat shocked by the strength of the cavalry, and at the same time he was deeply curious. You know, slaves already eat a lot, and a soldier with the physique of an apprentice knight consumes a lot of food every day. Of course, he couldn't get an answer for the time being, and under the city wall, Brand's armor was already stained with countless blood, and the momentum of the entire cavalry army behind him was also becoming unusual. Any elite soldier is killed in blood and fire. The reason why Ryan asked all his soldiers to come to the Crucible City is that he needs the strength of the army, and the other is that most of his soldiers have not experienced war. They can only be regarded as recruits, including Brand. Before this war, he was just a strong individual, a strong warrior. But with the fighting in this war, countless decisions were implemented from his mouth, and he was gradually changing from a soldier to an excellent general. With a wave of evil spirit filling his chest, Brand roared loudly, spitting out the accumulated evil spirit from his body, allowing the fighting spirit to flow throughout his body, and his muscles were no longer sore. Kill! He reined in his horse and looked at the chaotic abyss monsters, and the cavalry army charged again. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Hurtado looked at the cavalry army that once again pierced his army, and roared in anger. He looked at the people around him, his blood-red eyes gradually became crazy, but the few rationalities in his heart still made him stop using the power of the abyss to transform them into monsters to fight against the cavalry. He still needed these people to consolidate his authority and rule. As if sensing the crisis, someone next to him suggested, "Your Excellency the Pope, our army will not be able to enter the city in a short time, so why not summon Lord Frederick?" he said with a stiff face, as if that name was also terrifying. "It seems that this is the only way." Hurtado raised the scepter in his hand, and the dark light and shadow echoed on the surface of the scepter gem. "Honorable Frederick, the existence of the Abyss Demon, I call on you in the name of Dionysus to serve me, destroy the wall in front of you, and kill the enemies in it." A huge dark portal appeared on the battlefield. Brand stopped his horse, killed the surrounding abyss monsters, and then looked at the dark portal in the distance with a solemn look. A red-black 15-meter giant walked out of the portal. He had two horns like bull horns on his head, four eyes facing forward, looking cruelly and ferociously at the battlefield in front of him. In his bloody mouth with fine and sharp teeth, he seemed to be chewing something, and blood was spraying out of his mouth. A club in his hand, which was stained with an unknown amount of blood, was also stained black and covered with barbs. Even hard metal might not be able to stop its sharpness. Demon Giant, Ryan's expression was solemn. Sure enough, these cultists who defected to the devil mastered the power to summon abyss monsters. The lava giant before, and now the demon giant. It seems that the demon behind this cult is determined to take over the dying Exner continent. A demon giant, let alone other things, just a huge body, is not something that ordinary knights can fight. At least the Sky Knights have room to fight. And to kill such a demon giant, at least several Sky Knights need to cooperate tacitly, otherwise they will only be killed. Fortunately, I expected this. Ryan took out a crystal given to him by the Purple Crystal Master, and his eyes were a little blazing. How powerful is the power of the artifact? He crushed the crystal, and in an instant, the blood-red brilliance rushed straight into the sky, broke through the sea of clouds in the sky, and then fell into the depths of the earth of the Mage Academy. There is a furnace under the ground of the Mage Academy 100 meters away, but not many people know that there is an artifact in the furnace, an artifact belonging to the Stag Spirit. Because the Stag Spirit had fallen, the artifact had lost its function. The Mage Academy placed it in the furnace to try to replenish its power, but over the years, it had never succeeded. Even now, the artifact has completely lost its power. The Amethyst Master gave this thing to Ryan because the power of the artifact had disappeared. There was only one last release of power, and the strength of the release was not even as strong as the power of her casting a forbidden spell. In addition, in 1 or 2 years at most, the artifact will completely lose its last trace of divinity and become a mortal object, which made her sure that the Stag Spirit had fallen, so she chose to give up the artifact and give it to Ryan to fight against the Devil's power, giving them time to stay away from the Furnace City. When Ryan got the news of this artifact, he almost jumped up with excitement. Ryan has always been curious, why can Grand Duke Moriarty escape from the north to the Furnace City in the south, but the royal family of the Exner continent can't do it? It was also when he knew about this artifact that Ryan finally understood. Exner does have a kingdom, but the royal family of the kingdom, every king, is the most devout believer of the Deer Spirit. With the fall of the Deer Spirit, the royal family will naturally fall with it. However, as the most powerful existence in the royal family, after death, they will become the spirit of the artifact, and gain eternal life in disguise, which can be regarded as a favor of the Deer Spirit to the believers of Exner continent. Respected Gonsalves, I call in the name of the Stag, release your heroic spirit to fight for me and drive away all enemies for me. Ryan's voice called softly, and under the Mage Academy, a golden light flew out of the earth. It was a crown that fell in front of Ryan, and then an illusory figure appeared under the crown. The heroic spirit is the most important power of this artifact, which can make people live a long life and have unfailing strength. Of course, the premise is that the stag spirit is still alive. Gonsalves, I will obey your orders. The noble king clenched his fists in front of Ryan and performed a pious etiquette. Ryan stretched out his finger, and a deer spirit blessing costing 1,000 spiritual powers fell on the top of the hero's head. Then the hero, the former king of the Exner continent, turned and flew towards the demon giant. A great sword appeared in Goncalvez's hand. With just one leap, the great sword seemed to cut through the sky and fell, replacing all the images in Ryan's eyes. Until the light faded and the demon giant fell to the ground. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69: The Arrival of the Overpopulation Crisis. Is this the power comparable to that of a sanctuary knight? Ryan was shocked. With just one sword, he killed the demon giant. The crown has returned to Ryan's hand. As the power of this sword fell, the heroic spirit Goncalves also fell into deep sleep. This is what the Amethyst Master said: the artifact is only the last remnant. If it weren't for Ryan's dear spirit blessing, the heroic spirit should have dissipated directly after releasing the sword, and the crown would have been broken, and it would have fallen into eternal death along with the continent of Exner. With the death of the demon giant, the cultists also began to flee in fear, and the Crucible City erupted in a tsunami-like carnival. We won. Ryan rode his warhorse and walked in the Crucible City with his knight attendants. Wherever he passed, all eyes were full of enthusiasm. Indeed, victory in war can bring trust and respect. Even those serfs will feel that they can live better under such a lord. In front of everyone, Ryan also announced that all the soldiers on the city wall would be freed from their original slave status and turned into free people. Such a decision was not entirely for the purpose of enhancing his own prestige, but more for the purpose of bringing these people to the frozen land territory. Slaves are the wealth of the Lord, so they need Ryan to provide them with food every day, but the free people in the frozen land territory have to find their own way to eat. Not working hard? If you don't work hard, you can't even have food, and you live worse than serfs. But the slaves in the Furnace City at this moment don't know. They are surprised by the arrival of this change and shout for the kindness of the noble lord. In the next day, Ryan sent soldiers out of the city to investigate the traces of the cultists. It was not until he knew that the cultists had indeed escaped that he placed the plain gate in the center of the Furnace City. It's not that he didn't think about avoiding this war before, but after considering it, he found it impossible. The plain gate is so big. The Furnace City has a population of nearly 20,000 people, and it takes a long time to pass through the plain gate. During this time, once the group of demons followers rush into the city, it will definitely lead to an extremely chaotic situation. Moreover, once the plain gate appears, the Crucible City will definitely not be able to keep the abyss monsters out of the city. With a retreat, everything will be different. In addition, Ryan still needs to plunder the entire Crucible City. He needs wealth. There has never been a moment when he needs wealth more than now. Because the population of the Crucible City is too large, the appearance of 20,000 people in the frozen land is not only a problem of chaos in all aspects, but also a scarcity of food. The food from the Imperial Chamber of Commerce has arrived, but how long can the food last? Ryan needs wealth, a large amount of gold coins and things that the southern nobles like, to trade for enough food. Without food, he can't feed so many people. Without food, he can't afford more troops, and without troops, he can't open up more territory. It can only be said that the frozen land has ushered in its first population crisis. But it is not impossible for Ryan to give up these 20,000 people. Ryan stood at the ruins of the Mage Academy. The air here was no longer warm, but a chilling cold. The artifact disappeared, and the furnace completely lost its last temperature. In just a few hours, the temperature of the Furnace City was as bleak as the autumn wind. Such a temperature difference caused many old people in the Furnace City to pass away. They could not bear such cold. Ryan, who knew the result, could only let the people of the Furnace City cross the space portal in batches to the frozen territory. Let some soldiers who participated in the Furnace City defense war go to the frozen territory first. After the order was given, the Furnace City also calmed down in the short bustle. Many slaves and civilians were desperate, thinking that Ryan had given up on themselves, and stayed at home wrapped in clothes to welcome death with the furnace city. The north wind blew, and it snowed in the morning of another day. This is the first snowfall in the furnace city in 100 years. Behind Ryan stood some former nobles. They looked at Ryan's back with awe in their eyes and a change in their identity. Before the space portal came out, they still had the glory and pride of the nobility, but when the plain gate that had not been touched by the Crucible City for hundreds of years was easily released by Ryan, all their dignity disappeared. At this moment, they looked at the flying snow in the Crucible City, and their eyes did not have the aesthetic sense of this quiet snow city, but fear and despair. In the more than 100 years of the Exner continent, no story would praise winter. Everyone knows that in the cold north, there is only endless cold and hungry stomachs, and even wild animals cannot survive in the winter. Ryan closed the plain gate, not only making the civilians and slaves who could not see anything at the bottom feel desperate, but also the descendants of the nobles from the noble families are also uneasy. The Crucible City has gradually entered the same cold winter as the north. If they cannot leave with Ryan, they will eventually die in a cold night. Death and cold will fill this city, but before it dies completely, there is still soil that can be used for planting. Although most of this oil has been dug up and taken away, the remaining land still needs to be used, especially near the Mage Academy, where the soil is still fully fertile. Ryan turned his head and looked at those who chose to follow the noble council to the battlefield, and said, "I want you to stay here for a while, at least until this winter. I need a lot of food to plant the land here, the birth of the Lord system. I have also told you that when you go to my territory this winter, I will give you 3 places, 3 Lord places, and I can let you walk through the plain gate with at least 500 gold coins of wealth. This is my kindness, and it is also an answer you cannot choose." Ryan's words made many of the people in front of him clench their fists, but as Ryan said, they had no choice. Staying here is a dead end, and no one thinks they can survive this winter. And once they decide to become Ryan's people, they have no right to choose. After Ryan finished speaking, he turned around again and looked at the furnace city covered with snow. Without the heat from the underground furnace, even the exhaled air seemed to be condensing into frost. Chapter 70. Digging 3 feet deep into the ground? Weeds are my wealth. That's right. When the first group of people went from Furnace City to Tundra Territory, Ryan asked the civilians to bring everything they could, whether it was a wooden fork or a hoe, or even the soil outside the city. Ryan scraped 3 layers. Tundra Territory needs land to grow food, so it is indispensable to have fertile soil. This scraped layer of soil must be used to reclaim thousands of acres of land, right? At this time, Ryan even felt that among the wealth he got from Furnace City, these soils were the most expensive. The reason for the batches was much simpler. Tundra Territory could not guarantee the housing and various contradictions after the sudden emergence of nearly 20,000 people. The first group of people who went there were the most capable of working. In addition to bringing resources to Tundra Territory, they worked and continuously completed the city planning plan of Tundra Territory. The rest of the people stayed in Furnace City because the air here always takes a process to get cold. Before it gets completely cold, Furnace City is still habitable, and the conditions are even better than those in Tundra Territory. The most important thing is that it can also relieve some of the food pressure. It's a pity that the group of mages used up too many gold coins and took away too much wealth. Ryan regretted that he searched the entire Furnace City but didn't find much wealth. The nobles and mages didn't forget to take away the gold coins in their pockets when they left in a hurry. But Ryan soon felt relieved. Gold coins can be used as a medium for spells. It is incomprehensible that the nobles and mages didn't take these things away. Fortunately, in a hurry, he still found nearly 50,000 gold coins and more than 700,000 silver coins. The most valuable things are not these things. The nobles and mages took away gold and silver coins because these things can help the mages practice, but those precious works of art are difficult to use. Exquisite antiques, especially bottles and jars used to hold wine, are a huge fortune. Ryan transported all these things back to the frozen land. If Irina really comes next year, Ryan can give her a huge surprise. If it weren't for the fact that it wasn't the right time, Ryan would have planned to set up his own chamber of commerce to sell these riches to the south. The nobles would definitely not be stingy with their gold coins to buy these luxury goods. There are also houses. Ryan plans to let the remaining people in the Furnace City demolish the houses in the next period of time. Those tall and thick wooden beams and beautifully carved stones can all be transported back to the frozen territory. Not only can they decorate their own barren castle, but the ones that are not good enough can also be sold. As for who will buy them? Don't forget that by then, there will be lords in the frozen territory, and even civilian farmers like the Bain family will not mind buying the last batch of such materials to build their own residences in order to gild themselves and get close to Ryan, and most importantly, in order to widen the gap in status with other mudlegs. If there are really extra ones, they can be sent to the south as works of art. Ryan knows the planning too well. In addition to demolishing houses, Ryan has no intention of leaving other things, big or small. The nobles' manors were planted with flowers and grass. And Ryan also planned to wait until these plants adapted to the increasingly cold environment and survived, and then directly transported them back to the frozen land. In a word, no one would leave a single weed wherever Master Ryan passed. Digging 3 feet into the ground was easy. On that day, Ryan took people to the Mage Academy and dragged out the furnaces dozens of feet underground. This was to let everyone in the furnace city know that the city was indeed doomed, because the places where the underground fire was located had been frozen, and the deep earth would experience the dead silence of eternal winter earlier than the surface. In an instant, all conspiracy theories were broken, and the desperate people in the furnace city had to grasp Ryan's last straw. Naturally, many of Ryan's orders were also smooth. When the serfs became extremely active, the potential for development that could be unleashed was terrible. This also led to Ryan having to run around in the frozen land and the furnace city every 2 or 3 days to stabilize the passion of these people. Allowing a small number of people to cross the plain gate to the frozen land territory every once in a while can motivate these people to unleash more potential. Time came to the end of May. In a month, Ryan, a visitor from another plane, had the last warmth of this continent. With occultists no longer appearing, Ryan became bolder. He began to look for resource points around him. What did not disappoint him was that a copper mine was indeed found less than 10 miles north of the furnace city. After crossing the frightening cold and opening up the mine, it was also possible to avoid the wind and snow that had begun to appear at this time to a great extent. The mine was probably warmer than the furnace city. Part of farming, part of mining. I hope to find 1 or 2 more mines, and the rest will go to cut trees to make firewood. Oh, by the way, I also have to salvage the catch of the Crescent Lake. In the furnace city, Ryan recorded his plans bit by bit. Running between 2 worlds made him busy. When these future lords get used to it, I can enjoy it well, Ryan said to himself. According to his promise, with the addition of Beard, there will be 6 lords in the territory by the end of this year. This exceeds the number standard given to barons by the Empire, but Ryan doesn't care about that. After all, which baron's territory can have a population of 20,000 or 30,000? The frozen land territory is the border of the Empire. Who will take care of it? Even when those nobles knew about it, Ryan had enough confidence to tell them that he could have so many lords under his command. So, what is the standard for? Isn't it just to break it? Other barons can't do it, but it doesn't mean that Ryan can't do it either. If you think it's not possible, then give me a promotion. I, Ryan Clayton, deserve the title of Viscount. This furnace city is Ryan's greatest wealth since he came to Ixnel. Whether it is visible or invisible, it can make a leap in the development of his territory. But Ryan is not without anxiety. In addition to food, he found that every time he opened the plain door to enter here, he consumed more spirituality. From the initial 100 spiritual powers to open the plain gate to reach the Exner continent, now it needs 150 spiritual powers. He guessed that more might be needed in the future. In the future, he didn't even know if he could open the space gate to reach here. So Ryan was a little anxious. He needed to take away all the wealth that could be taken away in these few months. The first primitive accumulation of the territory depends on this time. Chapter 71 East. In the frozen land, on the Rhinoceros Horn Mountain, Ryan couldn't help but feel satisfied as he watched the castle become more and more magnificent. I didn't expect that in just 1.5 months, the furnace city would be colder than the frozen land. That world seems to be completely dead. To avoid accidents, you should stay in the frozen land, the old butler suggested. He was really afraid that one day Ryan would stay there with Yongji of the Exner continent. No, you can't guarantee where the space gate will open. Ryan shook his head. The most critical thing was himself. Every time he went to the Exner continent, he would appear near the furnace city, and then open the plain gate in the furnace city to send people and things over. It would not work if he changed someone else. Where is Beard? How much food did he buy back? During Ryan's absence, the biggest task of the old butler's son, Little Beard, was to buy food. The demand for food in the frozen land was a bottomless pit. But now every territory in the North Wind Province is extremely difficult, resulting in limited food that can be bought in the North Wind Province. Beard can only go to a farther place, not the Wing Canyon of the Empire, but to the east. The North Wind Province is located in the northeast corner of the Empire. The Wing Canyon is the only connection between the Empire and the North Wind Province. From the map, from the Wing Canyon to the east, and slightly south of the East Wind Province, there is a kingdom with 7 or 8 noble territories. The kingdom is the Andorra Kingdom, one of the 8 kingdoms on the Norris continent, and the one closest to the north. The other 7 kingdoms either have the Empire to defend them, or are in the warm south without being invaded by the cold winter of the north. In some cases, the Andorra Kingdom and the Floor Empire are the first line of defense for humans to resist the north. Coupled with the strength of the Empire, the Andorra Kingdom is completely the younger brother of the Empire. For many years, it has never dared to cross the border. In addition to the Andorra Kingdom, there are 4 dukedoms and earldoms. The combined land is almost half the size of the Andorra Kingdom. There are many reasons why there are dukedoms, earldoms, and even smaller territories in addition to the Empire and Kingdom in the south. Half of the reason why these territories were not incorporated into the Kingdom and Empire is because of the pride of their own bloodline. They fled to the south from the north of Norris continent because of the cold winter in the north. Their ancestors were originally of royal bloodline of the Kingdom, and even older. Such bloodline made them unwilling to bow to the Kingdom, and they also had troops and people in their hands when they fled. The other half of the reason came from the Church. The Church did not want to see the Empire and Kingdom expand more and more, so it supported the independence of those nobles with some noble blood. It is said that for a period of time after the end of the Pan-Plain War of the Gods, the struggle between theocracy and royal power was the bloodiest. Later, it was the decline of theocracy, so that there are not many church personnel in the Empire now. However, the Empire and several kingdoms still cannot swallow up those noble territories. The noble territories in the whole south are also a very powerful force. Ryan didn't want to care about the situation in the south, and he couldn't care about it. The reason why Beard didn't go to the south of the Empire, but went to the territory outside the Empire in the east to buy food, was because of the Flying Wing Canyon. If the food passes through the Flying Wing Canyon, if not half of it, then 30% will be left. Only those chambers of commerce backed by great nobles can pass through at a slightly painful price, otherwise, it will really be a case of plucking feathers from a passing goose. The benefits that the Flying Wing Canyon can bring to some nobles are huge, which is why Grand Duke Meyer's proposal to move the guards of the Flying Wing Canyon to the Xiangshan Plain in the North Wind Province failed. There are too many noble cakes there, not only because it is connected to North Wind Province, but also the most powerful military fortress in the entire east of the Empire. To put it bluntly, the center and focus of the Empire are actually on the west coast and the south, and combined into the southwest, so to some extent, the Flying Wing Canyon can be said to be the most important military force of the Empire in the Eastern Territory. It can even be said to be the only large-scale legion fortress. It is not only defending against the alien races in the north, but also the countless possible enemies in the east of 1/3 of the southern continent. The safety of half of the Empire's territory lies in the Wing Canyon. In short, Beard's experience in the Wing Canyon made him choose not to carry food across the Wing Canyon, even if he went to the more troublesome Eastern Kingdom and the territory of the great nobles. Ryan still supported this and even sent 100 soldiers and 2 Drowned Knights to follow. As far as he knew, the alien threat suffered by the Andorra Kingdom was not great, and it should be possible to buy food. There would not be a big problem with the several noble territories. If this opportunity could be used to reach some long-term cooperation, it would naturally be better. He hasn't come back yet. According to the plan, he should be back in 5 days at most, the old butler said truthfully. He didn't mind Ryan's decision. After all, Master Ryan arranged Beard to do so many important things, which itself represented a high level of trust. In the entire territory, no one was more trusted by Ryan than the 2 of them, father and son. Well, what about that group of orcs? How is the road construction going? It's almost completed, but the consumption is a bit high. It doesn't matter if it's high. It's supposed to be high. Use these orcs to complete the most dangerous tasks. Next, I will send a batch of slaves from the Crucible City. It's okay to use orcs at the beginning of road construction, but the delicate work later still needs slaves, but these slaves can't be used in the same way as orcs. Follow your will. Ryan thought of the North Wind Province again. It seemed that he hadn't cared about the situation in the North Wind Province for a long time. Let's wait for Bill to come back. He should find a way to buy food. Let's let him come later. Let Yaz come tomorrow. I heard that the old guy married a new wife recently. The old butler replied respectfully. Indeed, Mr. Yaz married the daughter of the Tyrell family. Tyrell? One of the 8 barons before? His family is indeed the largest, but I remember that his daughter is not much older than the Viscountess. Right, yes, Ryan thought with his eyes, then smiled and said, it seems that Tyrell can't fight anymore, and plans to put the chips for the Lord seat on the Yaz family. Moreover, his daughter's children will inherit the Lord title in the future. His plan is very clear. A few months later, the 2 lordship quotas initially promised by Ryan gradually became clear. Several families have already noticed the gap in ability. No matter how unwilling they are, they have to consider what will happen after failure. Chapter 72 Luna Mage, Golem Puppet. These guys who are used to being masters, they can't fight for a few months, Ryan sneered, and then said, go and tell them some news in private. Just say that there are too many people in the territory now, resulting in too much food pressure. If more arable land can be reclaimed, you will definitely be able to get the title of Lord, but distant water cannot quench immediate thirst. If someone can conduct effective research and ripening in the types of food and wheat, maybe he can also become a lord. Everyone is a wizard apprentice, how can their brains be so stupid? In addition, wait for another 3 months, you will continue to send out news, saying that the future arable land needs to be managed by people with knowledge and etiquette to supervise the output of the arable land. In this way, the passion of this group of people to struggle and work hard should be able to continue until the end of the year. If there is no demand, then create demand. Raising the status of some people is to lower the status of others. With a gap, naturally, the Lord can continue to exploit. Master Ryan is really a qualified noble lord. The old butler also smiled with relief, and then left into his cloak in the north wind. The Crucible City. Ryan came to this city again. The Crucible City, which no longer had many tall houses, was covered with flying snow. The city no longer had the bustle it once had. People walking on the snow were silent. Although some people were taken away by the nobles to places where there was no cold, those who stayed behind still had fears in their hearts. Would they be the last ones left and unable to leave? Such fear made them silent. Fortunately, today, Master Ryan once again rode his warhorse through the streets of the Crucible City, letting them know that they still had a chance to become one of the most hard-working people and be allowed to leave this dead Crucible City in advance. How is it? Can the food survive? Ryan came all the way to his original mansion, which had become the residence of some people. Among them, Sabin Han was the one who managed everything for Ryan. He was also the only magician among those who stayed in the Crucible City, unlike other nobles who were only apprentices of magicians. Hearing Ryan's words, Sabin raised his head and answered respectfully, Lord Ryan, we use the furnace to keep the temperature of the land, and at the same time use the method you mentioned to weave leaves into a net to cover the land. Those potatoes survived. I believe that not too many will die when they are harvested. That's good. Arrange another group of people to go outside the city to cut trees. I see there are still many trees over there. They won't live long if they are left. It's better to take them back and burn them as firewood, Ryan said. The Sabin in front of him was brought back to the frozen land, which was also reassuring for the nobles here. Just as Ryan was listening to Sabin's recent report on the Furnace City, a soldier suddenly called out from outside. Lord, outside, there is a monster outside. Monster? Ryan was shocked. Could it be that those cultists could summon a third demon giant level monster? No, that monster seems to be able to speak, the soldier also said with some doubts, because the scene he saw gave him too much shock. Go and have a look. Ryan came to the Crucible City this time with only a few night attendants. If he hadn't heard the soldiers say that they could talk, he would have wanted to open the plane door and run away. Soon, Ryan came to the wall of the Crucible City, looking at the blue monster 5 or 6 meters outside. His eyes were full of surprise. Golem puppet. After saying that, he said uncertainly, Are you Luna Mage? The tall golem puppet looked at Ryan, and then a loud but crisp voice came out. I'm Melania Luna. Is it really you? Ryan was shocked. This Luna Mage, after failing to break through the Archmage and merging his consciousness into the golem puppet, was still awake. And from the looks of it, this Luna Mage is not afraid of the cold winter after becoming a golem puppet. Why has the Crucible City become like this? Where are the Archmage and his people? Hearing the other party's words, Ryan fell silent, and then looked at the tall golem puppet. Mage Luna, how about we sit down and talk first? Ryan told the story of the fire in the furnace city being extinguished, the ground being frozen, and the great mages leaving the furnace city with the mage academy and the nobles and heading to the depths of the glacier. Then, he talked about the invasion of cultists, the demon followers and the abyss monsters, and finally he killed the demon giant with the last power of the artifact, and finally told the Luna Mage's identity. What about the body of the demon giant? After listening to Ryan's words, Luna Mage asked. Ah, the body? After the giant was split in half by the heroic spirit, the body seemed to have rotted. Ryan didn't really pay much attention to these. After all, when the demon giant died, a large number of abyss monsters fled, and he didn't dare to chase them. The demon heart of the demon giant is the energy source item for making the mage tower, and with a demon heart, new demon giants can appear among those demon believers. Mage Luna seemed to feel sorry for losing a high-value magic material, while Ryan felt that countless gold coins disappeared from his hands. What is the devil's heart? I haven't heard of it. Unfortunately, it's useless to regret now. Looking at this Luna Mage, it seems that she doesn't have much idea about the Mage Academy and her own identity. Ryan asked, where's Luna Mage going next? Are you going to find Master Amethyst and the others? Me. There seemed to be some confusion in Luna Mage's voice. After this winter, this world will never have warmth again, and will fall into eternal silence. In my current state, it's useless to find them. I just want a place to complete my magic research. It would be great if I could build a mage tower. Aren't you a great mage yet? Although my strength can be comparable to that of a great mage, I am indeed not one now. I failed to be promoted at the beginning, and almost even my soul was devoured. Hearing this, Ryan couldn't help thinking. Why don't you go to my territory, Master Luna? In another world, there are many legendary mages. Maybe you can fulfill your dream. Can I come with you? Master Luna's voice was a little nervous at this moment. The head of the golem puppet was also looking at Ryan, and its two sapphire-like eyes were shining. I'll think of a way. Ryan opened the door to the plane and looked at the portal that was only 2.5 meters wide, in contrast to Master Luna's huge body. Can this be passed? Maybe. There is another way, Master Luna said after a silence. Chapter 73 The Lord from the Kingdom. The essence of the golem puppet is not these stones soaked in magic potions, but the emblem. Just like the heart of the demon giant, the golem emblem is the origin of the golem puppet, Master Luna said, and then Ryan saw one of Master Luna's arms break and float in front of him, and then pieces of stone scattered, revealing the round blue emblem inside that looked like a gold coin. Master Luna disassembled his puppet body into several parts, and then said, it should be possible to pass now. Ryan looked at the huge corpse in front of him and thought to himself, is this Master Luna so easy to trust people? However, he didn't think of taking this opportunity to do anything. After all, he didn't understand what power the golem puppet had. In addition, even if this Master Luna didn't have the power of the Holy Knight level, it shouldn't be too far away. If he failed, it would be a big trouble. I'll get someone to move you over. In the frozen land, many people showed fear and panic when they saw the golem puppets that suddenly appeared. Fortunately, the soldiers suppressed them and they went to the military training ground at the foot of the Rhino Horn Mountain without any trouble. I have arranged for your mage manor. It will be completed by this winter at the latest. You can move in then, when the main part of the castle is completed in the next few days. You can live in the castle first, or I will arrange a residence for you at the foot of the mountain, Ryan suggested. Mage Luna was still looking at this strange world with curiosity. She seemed to feel the temperature in the air and looked to the south. Can I go over there to take a look? Ryan hesitated. I'm afraid there will be some trouble. I'm just a baron from the north. If you go from the north to the Northwind province, you will probably be arrested soon. There are many powerful beings in the empire, and there are more than 10 legendary wizards in the palace. Forget it, I'll just live in the mountains. When Master Luna heard about the legendary wizard, she was also a little afraid. Although she was also curious and wanted to see what the legendary wizard looked like, she had to abide by the rules of this world first. The Lord of Dawn, his light can actually keep this world warm, Master Luna said, and the whole person began to turn into a huge stone. No matter how Ryan looked at it, he couldn't tell that this was a golem puppet. Seeing that Master Luna finally calmed down, Ryan was also very excited. In his territory, he finally had a trump card like a sea stabilizing needle. Although the heroic spirit Goncalves in the artifact crown was more powerful, the artifact still needed Ryan to constantly use the deer spirit to bless and nourish it, but the Master Luna in front of him was a powerful living being. Go, vacate the room of Master Luna quickly, away from my room. Ryan was not too willing for Master Luna to live in the Baron's castle, but the entire frozen land, apart from the castle, did not even have a large manor, and ordinary houses were not worthy of the status of a great wizard. And Ryan also believed that this Master Luna preferred a quiet environment. He stood on the Rhino Horn Mountain and looked at the northern foot of the mountain. Perhaps he could build a magic tower for him on the north side of the frozen river. In this way, the influence of the frozen land can be expanded little by little, and naturally, the border of the frozen land can be drawn farther. In the following time, Ryan continued to travel back and forth between the frozen land and the Furnace City, mainly to transport the resources of the Furnace City to the frozen land as soon as possible. That world was getting colder and colder, and Ryan was very worried that it would die completely before winter. Ryan didn't want to know what the world would become when it died, at least not now. He just wanted to take advantage of this time point to use the resources there to develop the frozen land. A few days later, Beard, who bought food from the east, came back. This young man, who is about the same age as Ryan, became much calmer after running around. The soldiers behind him were stained with blood. It seemed that this journey was not perfect. Master Ryan, I brought your food back. Since the old butler began to hand over the butler's affairs to Beard little by little, Beard no longer called him Master Ryan, but Master. This also meant that the Beard family completely separated from the Clayton family and became Ryan's personal servants and subjects. Very good, but you seem to have brought me a guest. Ryan looked at the gorgeous carriage in the food team. Obviously, it belonged to a noble. Yes, Master, this is. Beard was just about to speak when the door of the carriage opened and a blonde girl came out. She was wearing knight armor, but it still couldn't stop the mouth-watering contours. I am Miholi Fragoso, daughter of Viscount Fragoso's family and lord of the Viscount territory. I meet the master of the frozen territory, Baron Ryan of the northern border of the empire. Miholi gave Ryan a standard knight's salute instead of aristocratic etiquette. I am from the Andorra kingdom. Beside him, Beard added, because of Miss Miholi's help, we were able to purchase 600,000 kilograms of grain and slaves to transport grain from the Andorra kingdom, but our condition was to come to the frozen territory with us without the empire knowing. Ryan nodded after listening, then looked at Miholi and said, Miss Andorra who sneaked into the empire, what is your purpose in coming here? Hearing Ryan's blunt description, Miholi was a little angry. Her chest, which was already childish, rose and fell more obviously, and she even wanted to draw the knight's sword at her waist. I'm not sneaking in. I'm here to discuss cooperation. If the barons of the empire and the lords of the kingdom meet without anyone knowing, it may become a good story if it is told, but it may also become a disaster. Which result do you think is better, Miss Mahey? I sold you food, Ryan continued. Since the struggle between theocracy and imperial power, the empire has strictly prohibited excessive exchanges between nobles and nobles outside the empire. I can sell you more food in the future. Ryan was speechless, with a smile on his face. Miss Mahey, please. Looking at the barren castle on the Rhinoceros Horn Mountain, Mahey couldn't help showing an envious expression. Baron Ryan's wealth is amazing. She could see from her eyes that many of the materials in the castle would be worth a lot if they were taken to the kingdom. Do all the nobles of the empire have such wealth? The nobles of the Andorra kingdom were also in awe and yearning for their neighbors who looked like terrible dragons. Chapter 74, The Transaction between the Baron of the Empire and the Viscount of the Kingdom. This is snow tea, shipped from a distant place. There are not many of them, and I'm afraid they will disappear completely in the future. Legend has it that snow tea grows in the gap between ice and water. It is a tough plant that does not need to breathe and draws nutrients from water. The moment it sees the sun, it is the moment when the snow tea matures. This moment can only last for one noon. Ryan described the beautiful story, which made Maholi's eyes reveal yearning. Therefore, people who are not from the Crucible City will never understand how there is no future for them to survive in the gap between ice and fire. That must be a beautiful world. Yes, it's very beautiful, just like the beginning of the world blooming. After Ryan finished speaking, he took out some snow tea. Looking at the golden and silver tea leaves, Maholi's eyes seemed to be about to pounce on them. This is from Miss Mihaj, to thank you for helping me buy so much food. In addition, if possible, I also hope that Miss Mihaj can bring some tea back to the kingdom and trade among the nobles. This thing is valuable, but there are a lot of them in the furnace city, so much that Ryan can't drink them all, so he can only sell them. After all, it is too difficult to preserve them. Even Master Luna said that there is no way unless the Great Ice Mage freezes them completely. Okay, Mihaj agreed directly, but soon reacted. I didn't come here to trade tea with you. After saying that, Mihaj became serious. I am talking to you on behalf of the Fragoso family. After saying that, he stretched out his palm, and the ring gem on it was engraved with a unicorn flying. Then, please tell me your purpose, Ryan said, looking at Mihaj. The two of them said a few serious words, and then returned to their previous state. Mihaj's eyes revealed a heavy color. I came here to buy weapons from you. Weapons? Ryan was a little surprised. A viscount of a kingdom came to buy weapons from him? Ryan didn't say anything, and heard Mihaly explain first. The two duchies and one earldom in the south of Andorra united to ask the kingdom for the land in the south near their territory, where there are thousands of hectares of arable land and a wide mountain range. No one thought that the kingdom would agree, but what no one expected was that the old king actually agreed. He signed a contract and gave the arable lands and the entire Griffin Mountains belonging to the kingdom to the three great nobles and several other great nobles who had never spoken. So, the four duchies and four earldoms suddenly united. When Mihaly said this, his tone was also angry. That foolish old guy actually handed over the kingdom's land to others, and even called it a good name, so that these nobles could help the kingdom resist the pressure of the empire, and let these nobles go directly to the north to fight with the foreign races in the north. But everyone knows that the empire will not go out of the Wing Canyon, and those nobles will never fight with the orcs in the north. As the lords and nobles of this land, we will never allow the foolish old king to sell out the kingdom's land. In the south, we have declared war on those nobles, but as you can imagine, for Fragoso, we lack weapons, and there are not many iron mines in the kingdom's land. Ryan was not thinking about the lack of weapons, but the order of the king of Andorra, and the nobles under him dared to deny and resist openly. The kingdom of Andorra, one of the 8 kingdoms in the southern land, even if they may be the bottom one because of their proximity to the empire and the north, but the nobles in the kingdom can actually violate it openly. This is probably the biggest hotspot on the entire southern land, except for the lord system in the past year, right? No wonder the king of Andorra traded the farmland and mountains to those nobles. Is this stupid? This is the political acumen of the old king for decades. He wants to use the nobles in the south to weaken the strength of the nobles in his kingdom who have the confidence to resist past orders. To put it bluntly, he still wants to consolidate his rule, but the royal family of Andorra can no longer use the political struggle within the kingdom to accomplish all this, and can only use external forces. Ryan's whole person has a kind of blood boiling of eating melons. He looks at Mihaly in front of him with burning eyes. How many do you need? Mihaly looked at Ryan with some doubts, not knowing why the Baron was so excited. We need 1,000 weapons and 500 sets of leather armor. We also need 100 complete knight armors. If we can have war horses stop, Ryan interrupted Mihaly. Everything else is easy to say. 100 sets of knight armor and war horses are impossible. Who do you think I am? I am just a baron in the north. Do you think I have those things? Mihaly stared at Ryan with big eyes. She followed all the way here and saw the fighting power of those soldiers with her own eyes. Before, the Fragoso family did not believe that a northern baron of the empire would have such a huge wealth. But they did not understand why Ryan needed so much food, almost accepting everyone who came, and they did not understand why Ryan had so many powerful soldiers. After knowing that Ryan was the heir of the Earl of Clayton's family, they thought that this baron was different, so Mihaly suggested that he come to see it himself. What he saw was indeed as expected. How could a baron's territory have such a large population? From what Mihaly saw, it felt that the frozen land territory had at least 7,000 to 8,000 people. We can pay with gold coins, gems, and even magic crystals. I don't need those things. Mihaly stared at Ryan. There was actually a noble who said that he didn't need gold coins. Food, livestock, we have these too. Mihaly gritted his teeth and said, as a noble of the kingdom close to the north, they didn't actually have too much food, but it was much better than the North Wind province. Then if we use these things as a trade, it's a deal. I will find a way to let the blacksmith forge the armor and weapons needed by the knights. At the same time, my butler will continue to buy food from you. Mihaly was a little shocked. How much food do you need? As much as you have, as much as you want. Ryan asked Mihaly to stay in the castle temporarily, and while he was thinking, He gradually came to the top of the Rhinoceros Horn Mountain, where he could see the most extensive and spectacular scene. Although Mihuli had a childlike face, he was much older than Ryan, so when he spoke, he was not so cautious inadvertently. She no longer talked about her family, but about us. There must be a huge change in the Andorra kingdom. Ryan was extremely curious. Chapter 75 Conflicts break out in the northern province. Just as Ryan said, take as much food as you can. For Mihuli, the demand for weapons is the same. As Ryan guessed, there is more than one noble lord behind Fragoso. Because he was worried that the conflicts in the kingdom would be interfered with by the empire, Mihuli did not dare to go directly to other nobles in the Northwind province, but he also suggested that Ryan could buy from those nobles and then sell them to them. There are many iron mines in the Northwind province, which is known to the surrounding areas. After sending Mihuli away, Ryan wanted to collect news about the Andorra kingdom from within the empire, but he really didn't have much manpower, so he had to give up for the time being. A few days later, Ryan had already ordered the blacksmiths in the territory to forge armor, and also arranged for Beard to go to the Northwind province to buy weapons. Less than 2 days after Beard left, a lord of the Shema territory from Baron Hatton appeared in the Frozen territory. Respected lord of the Frozen territory, Baron Hatton of my family sends his greetings. Rayo Hatton, the uncle of the Baron in the Hatton family, was also fortunate to become a noble because of the lord system. When facing Ryan, he seemed particularly confident and high profile. Baron Hatton wants to invite me to visit. Ryan couldn't help but be surprised when he heard Rayo's intention. After thinking for a moment, he agreed. Go back and tell Baron Hatton that I will visit as promised. Ryan waved his hand, and the old butler took Rayo away, who wanted to stay for a while to communicate with a 5th-class noble. Baron Hatton actually invited me. It seems that there is nothing good. When the old butler came back, Ryan asked him to inform Brand. The next day, Ryan led an army of 30 people to the Shema territory. After the road was roughly unblocked, his speed was much faster. When he came to the Shema territory, Ryan could feel that the atmosphere in this territory was a little tense. Ryan, you're finally here. Hatton greeted Ryan from a distance with a smile, as if they were good friends who had not seen each other for many years. Mr. Hatton. Ryan nodded and avoided Hatton's hug. The two walked side by side to Hatton's castle banquet hall. There were more beautiful maids here than the last time Ryan came. It seemed that Hatton's enjoyment here had not decreased at all. Take away any you like, or try them out tonight. Hatton winked at Ryan and said. Mr. Hatton, let's discuss business first. When Ryan saw Hatton before, he could feel that his eyes stayed on his army for a long time. Sure enough, hearing Ryan's words, Hatton also frowned. Leon, you don't know that the Bratwat has begun to become restless. He bought a large number of slaves from somewhere to fill his nightly territory, and his mother, the woman from the Myers family, took out a lot of money to help her son buy a group of young and strong slaves to form an army. If it were just that, it would be fine, but that insidious and cunning roach, the damn ugly crow, actually arranged his army to be stationed in Wat's nightly territory, and said that it was to support his lord to expand the territory. You also know that winter comes earlier in the Northwind province, so the autumn harvest is about to come. The Night territory of Wat did not cultivate so much food this year to feed the purchased slaves, in recent days. The little bastard in the Night territory of Wat has begun to boldly bring soldiers to rob my food. After saying this, Hutton looked at Ryan. Leon, my neighbor, we must never allow Night Lord Water to trample on the honor of the nobility and plunder the sacred wealth of the nobility. Ryan nodded and said with a smile, of course, it is absolutely not allowed for a lord to dare to go to war with a noble baron. However, Mr. Hutton, my territory is very busy. This winter may be colder than ever before. If I rashly go to war with Baron Roche's territory, I will lose a lot, Ryan said with some embarrassment, but if Mr. Hutton can support me with some food to get through this winter, then I will help you even if a group of slaves freeze to death in the territory. This is the deal. Hutton couldn't help but glance at Ryan. Leon, I remember you bought a lot of food not long ago. How come you were running short again? Mr. Hutton, you know that you can't grow much food in the frozen land, so you can only stockpile it, Ryan said helplessly. Besides, you know that I have to support so many knights, and they are very good at eating. That's right, Hutton nodded and agreed directly. This year, the food grown in the fields in his territory is relatively abundant, plus the batch he bought before. It is enough to survive this winter. but he will never allow Nightwater and Baron Roche behind him to rob him of even a grain of wheat. Then, my army will be stationed here. No, 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 Ryan, I hope you can stay too. The frozen land is too cold, and it's warm here. Hatton shook his head. He hoped that Ryan could support more troops. No one can cross your mountain road to the frozen land, so you don't have to worry too much if you stay here. Ryan instinctively realized that the things here were not simple. He asked Hatton, and the Baron looked a little hesitant, but still said it. Not long ago, Baron Barnes secretly sent someone to find me and said he wanted to form an alliance with me. The Northwind province might become chaotic, Hatton said worriedly. He was a little panicked, so he wanted Ryan's powerful military strength to protect himself. Barnes, Ryan still remembered that this Baron, whose military strength in Lingdu County was only lower than that of the two Viscounts, had shown goodwill to him in the Northwind City Council. After a moment of silence, Ryan roughly understood the problem. The tragic impact brought by the orcs' southward movement finally broke out. Because there was no fortress to block it, and the Black Oak people were powerful, the orcs plundered too much wealth in the Northwind province, including but not limited to food, clothes, and even livestock. This also led to the need for every noble in the Northwind province to buy food supplements from the south this year, but because the Empire gradually gave up the Northwind province, the Chamber of Commerce also cut the resources to the Northwind province. In addition, the most important thing is that the Empire no longer pays attention to the Northwind province and the huge tax of 1.5 million gold coins. At the beginning, everyone in the Northwind province said that everyone would pay as much as you pay, and we would collect a huge amount of gold coins. But when it came to paying, it was really difficult for every family. Every noble was unwilling to squeeze out a huge amount of gold coins from their own pockets. So, if they could rob from others' pockets, why not? Finally, there was the territorial conflict. Without the pressure of the Empire, everyone understood that the Empire had half abandoned the Northwind province. Many things that happened here, as long as they were not too extreme, the Empire would not care. Where is this tolerance? Is it true that the Empire will not care if the nobles' territories are invaded? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.